Chapter 2357 _ Equipment You're coming too, Guild Leader? Silent Wonder asked, a hint of excitement in her voice. Shifeng was Zero Wing's guild leader. He had many things he needed to do every day. She had thought the guild would, at most, send a guild elder or vice guild leader as a show of support for the Azure Chamber of Commerce's competition. She had never thought Shifeng would want to make the trip himself. Azure has the ability to travel between God's domain's main continents. This is a good opportunity to investigate the situation on the western continent, Shifeng said, nodding. The planar passage's activation provided the major powers an opportunity to obtain more resources, but compared to what one could gain from another main continent, the other worlds offered scrap. This was especially true regarding the main continent's merchandise. Reselling such items could offer significant profits. This was also why so many superpowers were so desperate to join the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Azure was one of the few powers in God's domain with the ability to travel between the main continents. Although Zero Wing had no chance of joining Azure right now, it wouldn't hurt to use this competition to get a glimpse of the western continent. Finding a way to travel between the eastern and western continents might be an issue for others, but it was a simple matter for Shifeng. Zero Wing severely lacked funds for many of the guild's needs, especially the development of Zero Wing's territory in the Cold Spring Canyon. As soon as the guild began to develop the area, it would become a bottomless pit that endlessly devoured coins and resources. If Zero Wing relied on Candlelight's current income, it would take a very long time to develop the territory properly. The best solution Shifeng could come up with was to resell Zero Wing's merchandise on the western continent. Not only would this generate income far more quickly, but it would also generate enough to drive any superpower mad with envy. I'll take care of the necessary preparations then. Naturally, Silent Wonder was overjoyed that Shifeng wanted to attend the competition with her, and she immediately left to prepare what she'd need for the competition. All right. Come see me later and collect some equipment, Shifeng said. Since Silent Wonder had become an advanced master alchemist, she could produce items with far more speed than before, and as a result, her leveling speed had substantially increased. In fact, she had already reached level 99. However, her equipment was still average at best. She wasn't even wearing full level 95 equipment. Although Azure's internal competition was a personal affair, Silent Wonder was still a member of Zero Wing. If the Chamber's representatives saw her current equipment, Zero Wing would become a laughingstock. Equipment. When Silent Wonder took a look at her own equipment, she was a little ashamed. Her equipment was pretty shabby. More than half of the items she wore was level 90 equipment, and the few level 95 pieces she had were only secret silver rank. Her equipment might be excellent for ordinary expert players, but she was Candlelight's chief alchemist. For someone of her status, equipment of such quality was like wearing a pauper's rags. After all, the items in Zero Wing's guild warehouse were available to Candlelight's lifestyle players as well. However, to increase her development as an alchemist, she had spent almost all of her GCPs on rare materials. Once Silent Wonder collected her alchemy tools and materials, she promptly made her way to the basic meditation room Shifeng occupied. As she entered the room, Shifeng gestured to the strengthened crimson sunset on the stone table and said, "Here, give this a try." Since the crimson sunset was basically made of mana stones and magic crystals, it wasn't restricted to a particular class. Once equipped, the set's attributes would automatically adjust to its wearer. This was one of the benefits of mana set equipment. A Tier 2 advanced mana set equipment? Silent Wonder was stunned after inspecting the crimson sunset. She wasn't a stranger to mana set equipment. Some of Zero Wing's members had used such items before, and many of the Candlelight's members had watched on with envy. Mana set equipment was essentially equipment made of pure mana. When equipped, it would increase the mana density around the player, calming and clearing their mind. However, mana set equipment was incredibly rare. The guild didn't have enough to allow its members to purchase it with GCPs. And yet, Shifeng was giving her her own mana set equipment. Moreover, this wasn't any ordinary mana set equipment. It was a 6-piece Tier 2 advanced mana set equipment. At this stage of the game, not even the various superpowers likely had such a set. Guild leader, this is too precious. I'm only an alchemist. Giving this crimson sunset to me would be a waste. It'd be better if someone else in the guild used it, Silent Wonder said, refusing Shifeng's generosity. If Shifeng had merely offered her level 95 dark gold equipment, it wouldn't be a major issue since it wouldn't be helpful for very long, but that wasn't the case for the crimson sunset. A player could rely on the Crimson Sunset until they reached level 120. A lifestyle player like her wouldn't be able to make full use of the set equipment. You're our guild's chief alchemist. I can afford to give you such equipment, Shifeng said, chuckling. He then pointed to the pile of equipment in a corner of the room and continued, moreover, our guild has plenty of these sets. Plenty? At first, Silent Wonder was confused, but when she turned to look where Shifeng had pointed, she gaped in shock. More than 20 sets of equipment sat in a pile on a massive stone table in the corner of the room. Every one of those sets looked just like the Crimson Sunset before her. Alright, hurry up and equip it. If we waste any more time, Azure's people will likely grow impatient, Shifeng reminded her when he saw her in a daze. Suddenly, Silent Wonder realized that she didn't understand her guild as well as she had thought. First, he had handed her the Droplet of Life recipe, and then Shifeng had shown her that strange reception room. Now she learned that the guild had a pile of Tier 2 advanced mana set equipment. However, Silent Wonder didn't give the matter much thought. Since Shifeng insisted, she stopped hesitating and equipped the Crimson Sunset he offered. In seconds, Silent Wonder transformed from a cold, workaholic beauty into a charming, graceful witch surrounded by a layer of dense mana. The crimson robes radiated a faint, bloody mist that gave Silent Wonder a wicked feeling. Wearing the Crimson Sunset, she looked like a completely different person. Once they were ready, Shifeng and Silent Wonder quickly made their way to White River City's teleportation hall. After arriving at the teleportation hall, they headed toward one of the advanced restaurants located on the second floor. As they entered the restaurant, a level 100 Guardian Knight moved forward to greet Silent Wonder. He looked to be in his early 30s and wore 4 pieces of epic equipment. The Guardian Knight's weakest piece of equipment was even level 95 fine gold rank. Every one of the man's movements seemed natural and weightless. From what Shifeng could tell, this Guardian Knight should only be slightly weaker than Yen Tianxing. Long time no see, second miss, the Guardian Knight respectfully greeted Silent Wonder. Cloud? Why are you here? Silent Wonder was a little surprised to see this Guardian Knight, Cloud Hunter. I thought you've been managing one of the branch guild on the western continent. Has something happened to it? The family's branch guild is fine. The old master was simply worried that you might encounter some problems during your trip, so he sent me to escort you, Cloud Hunter said, shaking his head. He then turned to Shifeng, who stood behind Silent Wonder, and said, however, it seems you would have been safe without me. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. You grandpa is being too cautious. They wouldn't dare move against me during such a crucial time, Silent Wonder said, not feeling surprised by the arrangement in the least. In a slightly prideful tone, she continued, allow me to introduce you. This is my guild leader, Black Flame. Not only is he an intermediate master forger, but he's also Starmoon Kingdom's #1 expert. He's even slain Warblood's commander. If those people dare to attack, they'll find that they've only made a one-way trip. The old master simply wants to ensure your safety. After all, the boundary space we're heading to is the Dark Hills. Azure has stationed some people in the area, but it won't stop anyone with ill intentions, Cloud Hunter said. I understand. Let's set out then. Silent Wonder nodded. She understood how special an area the Dark Hills was, but Shifeng was a Tier 3 player. Anyone that tried to ambush them would be digging their own grave. Cloud Hunter said nothing more after witnessing Silent Wonder's nonchalant attitude. His task was simply to protect her. Following which, he led Silent Wonder and Shifeng to the Fire Dragon Empire. Chapter 2358, Boundary Space Fire Dragon Empire, Fire Dragon City. 20 flashes illuminated in the city's teleportation hall. As these flashes faded, players and standardized equipment emerged from the array. The moment these players appeared, they attracted envious, awed looks from many of the building's other occupants. Even the lowest level player in the group was level 99 and wore standardized level 95 dark gold set equipment. Standardized dark gold set equipment couldn't compare to ordinary set equipment of the same level and rank, but its basic attributes were on par with level 95 dark gold equipment. At this stage of the game, most ordinary experts were stuck at level 95 and would be lucky if they had a full set of level 95 secret silver equipment. Not even large guilds' core experts dared to dream of wearing level 95 dark gold equipment. The man leading the group was a level 100 player, and not only did he wear 5 pieces of epic equipment, but he also carried a crimson axe that radiated a chilling aura with an indiscernible rank. The weakest of this man's equipment was level 95 dark gold rank. Even among such high-leveled and excellently geared players, he was conspicuous. While the crowd wondered who these players were, two level 99 players with dense life auras approached the group. These two were none other than Cold Memory and South Dream, whom Shifeng had met earlier. "Al, you actually made a trip here? If your grandfather finds out, he'll definitely scold you," South Dream said, pinching the bridge of his nose as he gazed at the level 100 berserker youth named Burning Owl. Burning Owl was one of South Dream's childhood friends. He was also one of the Azure Chamber of Commerce's vice guild leaders. Apart from the fact that he had his family's support, Burning Owl had earned the position through his superior abilities and talents. "Of course. This is an important day that decides our family's position. How could I miss it?" Burning Owl said, chuckling. "How did it go with my second sister?" "We tried, but Wonder intends to stay with Zero Wing. We have no choice but to ask Silk Moon to join Dark Pursuit," Cold Memory said, frustrated. "However, Zero Wing's guild leader has promised to arm Wonder with the guild's full support." "Zero Wing? Support my second sister?" Burning Owl could not help but frown. Zero Wing really knows how to take advantage of people. "Are they planning on relying on my second sister's identity to claim benefits from Azure? Second sister is too gullible." The Azure Chamber of Commerce's influence stretched across both of God's domain's main continents. Even the various superpowers desperately fought to join the chamber. As for his second sister, she was a free spirit that never cared about the family's matters. Unlike her, Burning Owl constantly managed many of Azure's affairs, which meant he had to deal with the powers that continued to seek a place with Azure. "I am impressed by Zero Wing's ability to nurture lifestyle players. I'm confident that Wonder will perform well in the competition," South Dream added. "Hopefully that's the case, but if Zero Wing's guild leader tries to take advantage of my second sister, I'll show him the power of my Heaven Piercer team," Burning Owl said, nodding as a cold glint flashed in his eyes. Neither Cold Memory nor South Dream offered a response. The Heaven Piercer team Burning Owl controlled was certainly powerful. It might not have a lot of members, less than 50 in total, but every member was an expert among experts in the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Even the weakest member could rival peak experts. If these players split up and targeted a guild, even as a Tier 3 Sword King, Shifeng would find them difficult to deal with. Meanwhile, Shifeng and his two companions reached a large forest's edge on their mounts a short distance away from the Fire Dragon Empire. A gigantic magic array enveloped the forest, and a massive spatial tear was faintly visible in the sky. It was as if this entire forest were located within the spatial tear. The only way to enter or leave this forest was through the massive steel checkpoint. This was the Dark Hills, a famous boundary space among the neighboring empires and kingdoms. It was also a well-known trade hub between the nearby countries. Although the Dark Hills was a trade hub, it was not open to individual players or ordinary powers. Only the various major powers from the neighboring kingdoms and empires had access. When they needed to find precious materials, they usually came here. All trades in the Dark Hills were done through a bartering system. There were also large-scale player auctions from time to time, in which incomparably precious items would be sold. Most importantly, the Azure Chamber of Commerce controlled the Dark Hills. Occasionally, Azure would sell items that could only be found on the Western continent, which were very attractive to the various major powers. Azure's presence was the reason that the Dark Hills had become such a famous trade hub. A large number of players stood in line for the checkpoint, with many of them driving carriages filled with non-bag space items. They were all looking to trade their items in the Dark Hills. Due to Azure's forces at the checkpoint, none of these players dared to make a fuss as they waited. The Chamber of Commerce had stationed all sorts of war weapons and magic arrays at the checkpoint as well to secure its rule over the area, and a small army of experts had garrisoned in the Dark Hills. Not even an army of tens of thousands of experts could shake Azure's rule in the Dark Hills, much less a small team. After arriving, Shifeng's group quietly stood in line, waiting to enter the Dark Hills. It was a dozen minutes or so before they reached the steel gate, reinforced by a magic array. "Second Miss, Guild Leader Black Flame, please wait here for a moment. I'll handle the entry procedures," Cloud Hunter said before approaching the Azure members stationed at the gate. "You and Second Miss can go in," the robust man at the gate said after examining Cloud Hunter's proof of identity. He then pointed to Shifeng and said, "He must wait out here for now." "What?" "My guild leader is coming with us," Silent Wonder explained. "This is a very important day. To maintain the peace, outsiders aren't allowed on the premises. However, since he is your companion, Second Miss, I'll make this easier, but he'll still have to undergo an inspection before he can enter," the robust man decided, chuckling. "Why aren't your men inspecting them then?" Silent Wonder demanded as she gestured to a group of players that walked through the gate without an inspection. None of those players were members of the Azure Chamber of Commerce. They are from the Fire Dragon Empire's various superpowers and Azure's esteemed guests. They are different, the robust man replied. You better not go overboard, brute. Zero Wings Guild leader is our second Mrs. Esteemed guest. Cloud Hunter coldly informed the robust man, Prideful Brute. Although Prideful Brute was one of Azure's peak experts, he wasn't a member of Silent Wonder's family. Even a fool could tell that he was trying to cause trouble to humiliate Silent Wonder. Didn't I say that he can go in as long as he allows us to inspect him? Prideful Brute said, grinning at Cloud Hunter. What? You want to start a fight here? With Prideful Brute's question, the 40 heavy crossbows on the wall turned to aim at Cloud Hunter, and two of Prideful Brute's companions stepped forward. Both players were Azure experts as well, and they wore the same battle array set equipment as Prideful Brute. When they activated their battle array, they'd be just as powerful as Cloud Hunter overall. That was the reason that Prideful Brute dared to act so arrogantly before Cloud Hunter. Prideful Brute's attitude even infuriated Silent Wonder. She wanted nothing more than to teach the man a lesson. Sure Feng was Zero Wings Guild leader. If he had to be inspected before he'd be allowed into the Dark Hills, it would be embarrassing for her guild. Don't do it, Second Mississippi. If you take action, you'll play right into his hands, Cloud Hunter quickly advised his charge when he sensed Silent Wonder's rage. He has full control over this area. He has the authorization to suppress you if you attack, even if you are one of the Chamber's Vice Guild leaders. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The Dark Hills wasn't an ordinary location. It was an important source of income for the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Hence, the Chamber's security of this area was of the utmost importance. As the checkpoint's manager, Prideful Brute had the authorization to attack anyone who wasn't Azure's guild leader or a Grand Elder if they caused trouble. If Silent Wonder caused a scene and died as a result, her maternal grandfather wouldn't be able to object. It seems you're not that dumb after all. This is one of Azure's most important territories. Do you really think your family has full say in Azure? Prideful Brute said, sneering Silent Wonder. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a sword light startled everyone. The attack was so fast that by the time players had reacted, it had already sliced through Prideful Brute's throat. As the sword light faded, Prideful Brute lost all of his HP and collapsed powerlessly to the ground. Everyone that had seen the attack spun toward its origin. The attacker was none other than Silent Wonder's gesture phone. Chapter 2359, Unfortunate Death. Prideful Brute died. How dare he? Everyone stared at Sure Feng in shock. The players from the various superpowers were especially stunned. Azure was a large-scale chamber of commerce with close to 100 years of history in the virtual gaming world. It was no weaker than a super guild. Azure was even capable of operating on both the western and eastern continents in God's domain, which was why the various superpowers sought to become a member. The Dark Hills was one of Azure's important territories, and as such the chamber had stationed 4,000 experts at the checkpoint. It had also set up 40 heavy crossbows and 6 basic mana pulse cannons on the checkpoint's walls. All sorts of magic arrays protected the checkpoint as well. Even domain realm experts would have to behave themselves here. After watching Prideful Brute die, Cloud Hunter was utterly stupefied. He simply couldn't understand why Sure Feng had been so impulsive. The several cloaked players that Prideful Brute had respectfully welcomed into the Dark Hills earlier jerked to a halt, watching Sure Feng curiously. That guy must be crazy, Big Sis Jade. He actually dared to attack someone here. I doubt even the Long family's second miss can save him now, a blue-clad assassin youth said. Although the Long family was one of the Azure Chamber of Commerce's main shareholders, Silent Wonder didn't have a particular position or authority in the chamber. She could only rely on the Long family's old man for help. Prideful Brute, on the other hand, was one of Azure's upper echelons. Silent Wonder was lucky that he had shown her any respect. Now that the situation had devolved, Prideful Brute's faction wouldn't let this matter rest unless the Long family's old man made a personal appearance. Furthermore, magic arrays had been set up all over the Dark Hills checkpoint. Not only was all teleportation prohibited, but if Azure activated a magic barrier, Sure Feng wouldn't have any hope of escaping physically. He wouldn't get away with a single death either. He's courageous, but it's a pity that his actions will only result in his death. He simply doesn't understand how strong superpowers are, the female berserker named Jade Bamboo said, a hint of admiration flashing in her eyes as she gazed at Sure Feng. However, she quickly turned away from him to look at the refined middle-aged man above the checkpoint's gate. This middle-aged man was Hermit, one of the Azure Chamber of Commerce's old monsters and the Dark Hills protector. He ranked among the top of the Fire Dragon Empire's players. A domain realm expert wouldn't even have a chance to escape with their life from someone like Hermit, much less defeat the man. She suspected only the two Vice Alliance Masters or the Alliance Master from her Adventurer Alliance would have any hope of surviving a fight against Hermit. While Jade Bamboo watched, Hermit jumped down from the wall, landing before Shifeng's group. As he did, he earned horrified looks from the various superpowers experts. They looked as if they had seen a ghost. Even Cloud Hunter watched the older man seriously. "Elder Hermit, please don't misunderstand. This isn't what it looks like," Cloud Hunter hurriedly explained. If he had only had to face the checkpoint's war weapons and various experts, he would have been confident of helping Shifeng escape, but now that Hermit was involved, the situation had changed. Hermit wasn't allied with either of the two families, but he was Azure's secret enforcer. He had assassinated countless peak and apex experts that had wished to harm the Azure Chamber of Commerce. In contrast to the visiting players, the several peak experts that guarded the checkpoint couldn't help but grin when Hermit appeared. Those people have crap luck. I hadn't thought that Elder Hermit would get involved. Not even Old Man Long can help that guy now, not to mention Silent Wonder. Elder Hermit is famous for being a stickler for the Chamber's rules. Initially, they hadn't been particularly confident of going up against Shifeng. After all, Shifeng had Cloud Hunter with him, who was one of Azure's apex experts and one of the outstanding talents among the organization's younger generation. They could not afford to kill Cloud Hunter without a good enough reason. If Cloud Hunter intended to help Shifeng escape, the swordsman was likely to get away. However, they no longer had to worry about that problem. Hermit was one of the strongest players in the Azure Chamber of Commerce. He'd have no problems killing Cloud Hunter, much less suppress the youth. If Hermit wanted someone dead, very few would survive against him. As Hermit slowly approached Shifeng's group, another group of cloaked players who watched from afar began to panic. How? Why is Hermit here? Burning Owl paled when he saw the middle-aged man. Doesn't he normally patrol inside the Dark Hills? Burning Owl had been surprised to see Shifeng abruptly attack and slay Prideful Brute, but he was actually quite pleased to watch the man die. As a result, his opinion of Shifeng significantly improved. As such, he had intended to lend a helping hand, but now that Hermit had arrived, this problem had become far worse. Even Burning Owl was afraid of the older man, and Hermit was one of the guild's grand elders. Hermit wouldn't back down out of respect even if he were one of Azure's vice guild leaders. While Burning Owl considered ignoring the repercussions to save Shifeng, Hermit appeared before the swordsman in question and extended a hand. "Greetings, guild leader Black Flame. I am Hermit, the Dark Hills protector," Hermit said, smiling at Shifeng. "I've been hearing of you for some time now, but I hadn't expected to meet you here today, guild leader Black Flame." Both Azure's members and the various superpowers experts gaped in shock when they heard Hermit's greeting. "What's going on?" Jade Bamboo stared with wide eyes. Everyone in the Fire Dragon Empire had heard of Hermit, especially the various superpowers experts. They all treated Hermit like the Grim Reaper. The man was known for his indifferent expression, and even when he had stood before her Adventurer Alliance's Alliance Master, he had treated her coldly. Now, however, Hermit welcomed Shifeng with a smile. It was unbelievable. Even Cloud Hunter and Burning Owl, who were both quite familiar with the middle-aged man, were utterly flabbergasted, their eyes nearly falling from their sockets. Was this really the Hermit they knew? Even stranger, Shifeng had just killed Prideful Brute in public. Prideful Brute had picked the fight, but he was still one of Azure's peak experts, and Shifeng had slain him as so many people watched. This would definitely damage Azure's reputation. Normally, Hermit wouldn't tolerate such an insult. Both Cloud Hunter and Burning Owl figured Shifeng would be lucky if Hermit decided to spare him. However, not only wasn't Hermit attacking the swordsman, but he had greeted Shifeng with a smile. "You offer too much praise, Elder Hermit. I've heard a lot about you as well. I am here to accompany Silent Wonder and visit the Azure Chamber of Commerce," Shifeng politely responded. In reality, Hermit's behavior surprised even him. "I see. The competition will begin soon. I'll have someone guide you and your group to the venue, Guild Leader Black Flame," Hermit said. He then instructed one of his subordinates to lead Shifeng's group through the gates. After watching the amicable conversation between Hermit and Shifeng, and Hermit's initiative to have someone lead Shifeng into the Dark Hills, everyone was utterly confused. Elder Hermit, that player hasn't been inspected. And he killed Prideful Brute. We cannot just let him get away with this. One of Azure's peak experts whispered to Hermit. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The other Azure experts nodded in agreement. However, they then felt an intense aura wash over them. It was from none other than Hermit himself. Fools? Hermit glared at the peak expert that had spoken. You think you can afford to provoke a tier 3 player? It seems you lot have been slacking while I wasn't around. From now on, you and that Prideful Brute will spend your days in the combat training rooms. You are only allowed a break once you've passed those trials. After saying so, Hermit ignored the experts and left. Chapter 2360 Dark Hills. Shocked watching Hermit leave, the several peak experts from Azure were stunned. Tier 3. How is that possible? Nobody in our chamber is even confident of challenging their Tier 3 promotion quest. How can he have reached Tier 3 already? Tier 3 classes were no longer foreign to the various superpowers in God's domain, who knew very clearly how powerful a Tier 3 class was. It was not something that Tier 2 classes could go up against. Meanwhile, now that level 100 players had already appeared, the various superpowers had started researching the Tier 3 promotion quest. However, their findings indicated that the Tier 3 promotion quest was absurdly difficult. Ordinary experts could not hope to complete the quest as soon as they reached level 100. As for Peak and Apex experts, they faced an even greater challenge. After all, not only had they obtained excellent legacies, but they also had to challenge the highest difficulty promotion quest available in consideration of their future development. If they settled for a mediocre result, they would only be harming themselves in the long run. However, even the ordinary Tier 3 promotion quest already exceeded the expectations of the various superpowers because players had to travel to level 100 neutral maps to conduct their Tier 3 promotion quest. Level 100 neutral maps were not places that just any player could visit. Even a team of level 100 Tier 2 experts would face great danger when exploring a level 100 neutral map. Anyone capable of completing their Tier 3 promotion quest at this stage of the game undoubtedly had extraordinary strength. Needless to say, after completing their Tier 3 promotion quest, they would only have further improved their extraordinary strength. Brute died for nothing this time. That's right. He really dug his grave this time. Let alone Brute, even if Black Flame killed one of the chamber's elders, the chamber would most likely still ignore the matter. If what Hermit said was indeed true, then Prideful Brute's attempt to use Shurfeng to make trouble for Silent Wonder was simply suicidal. After all, the Azure Chamber of Commerce didn't have a single Tier 3 player right now. If a Tier 3 player wanted to do something against Azure's members out in the fields, particularly in level 100 neutral chamber, would be absolutely powerless to do anything about it. To avoid such an outcome, the chamber naturally wouldn't retaliate against Shurfeng just because he responded aggressively to Prideful Brute's provocation. As for the spectating crowd, when they saw Hermit berating Azure's peak experts, their jaws dropped even more than before. They simply could not wrap their minds around what had just happened. Who is that Black Flame? Black Flame had killed Azure's Prideful Brute, yet not only did Hermit not react in rage, but he even berated his own people. Jade Bamboo's eyes roiled with confusion as she gazed at Azure's peak experts. Although Hermit had spoken to those peak experts through a team chat, which prevented her from hearing what he said, she could still see his behavior and sense the aura he exuded, particularly his sudden burst of killing intent. That dense killing intent was something that made even an apex expert like herself shudder in fear. Moreover, she could tell that Hermit's killing intent wasn't directed at the departing Shurfeng, but at the several peak experts before him. From this, one could tell that the behavior of Prideful Brute and the other experts of Azure had enraged Hermit. At the same time, it was also obvious that Hermit was afraid of Shurfeng. Hermit was one of the top 10 experts of the Fire Dragon Empire, yet he actually appeared fearful of another player right now. This was simply unbelievable. It's over just like that? At this moment, Burning Owl, who stood a short distance away from the checkpoint, could not help his stupefaction when he saw Hermit walking away. He could not understand what had just happened. However, Cold Memory and South Dream, beside him, were not the least bit surprised by Hermit's response to Shurfeng's aggression. The fact that Shurfeng was now a Tier 3 player was still a secret. After the two of them found out about this, they had immediately reported the matter to their Vice Guild leader. Meanwhile, their Vice Guild leader had promptly issued a gag order on this secret. Although the two of them hadn't told anybody else, with Azure's discerning intelligence department, Hermit must have obtained word of it. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have let this matter rest so easily. After Shurfeng and his companions entered the Dark Hills, They immediately felt a pleasant sensation enveloping their spirits. The Dark Hills was located within a sealed space. Not only was the mana density here considerably higher than that of the outside world, but there were also multiple teleportation gates to the cities of neutral races, which allowed human players to travel freely to those cities. Likewise, neutral players could teleport to the Dark Hills from their respective cities. Hence, the Dark Hills Demonstone Town became an excellent trade hub. The one downside was the ridiculously high cost of the teleportation gates. Each use cost 300 magic crystals, a price utterly beyond ordinary experts. Only major powers could tolerate it. Meanwhile, as Demonstone Town was only so large, in order to avoid overcrowding, Azure, the power that had captured it, had limited entry to members of the various major powers. However, even with this rule in place, Demonstone Town was still extremely crowded. One could see not only the experts of the Fire Dragon Empire's major powers but also many players belonging to various neutral races present. Many of these players were hawking their wares along the streets of the city. Some of the items were enough to tempt even Sure Feng. The Demonstone Auction House, which was located at the town center, was the liveliest place in the entire town. It's no wonder so many powers were trying to enter this place back then. Sure Feng sighed ruefully as he looked at the crowded auction house. Zero Wing City's auction house might be grand and majestic, but when comparing the quality of items available, Zero Wing City's auction house was leagues behind the Demonstone auction house. Every item sold in the Demonstone auction house was precious. One could buy even epic weapons and equipment here. Of course, as the Demonstone auction house only allowed bartering, it didn't matter even if players brought a ton of coins here. The only options players had were to trade using the requested items or to pay magic crystals. However, magic crystals were a strategic resource to the various major powers. Hence, most of the major powers that came here would only trade using the required items. Those that lacked the required items could only window shop to sate their desires. As for the auction house's second floor, the Azure Chamber of Commerce currently had full control over it. Only the members of invited superpowers were allowed entry there. The members of ordinary powers could only watch Azure's internal competition from the first floor hall. Under the lead of Hermit's subordinate, Shifeng's group entered the second floor unhindered. At this moment, not only was the second floor hall seated with Azure's upper echelon, but there were also plenty of players belonging to the upper echelons of various superpowers. Azure's internal competition today would decide whether the Long family or the Duan family would rule over the chamber. Hence, the superpowers placed considerable importance on the competition today. After all, if the family they supported won, they would gain greater benefits from Azure. On the other hand, if the family they supported lost, their benefits would naturally decrease. When Shifeng's group entered the venue, everyone's gaze promptly shifted to it. That person's black flame? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. How desperate is this guy trying to gain the Long family's favor? He actually dared to kill a member of the Duan family. Doesn't he know that the Duan family has much more influence than the Long family in the Fire Dragon Empire? He's used to playing tyrant in a kingdom. He is naturally short-sighted when it comes to the bigger world. I heard that Giant's Heart has plenty of partnerships with the Duan family. This time, the Duan family has even managed to get Vice Guild leader White Autumn to visit. I heard that White Autumn recently gained a god's blessing, and his strength is now off the charts. If the Duan family manages to get White Autumn to secretly take action, Zero Wing will be finished. At this point, the various superpowers members had already heard about what had occurred at the checkpoint. They had never imagined that Sure Feng would actually be foolish enough to kill the Duan family's prideful brute. Meanwhile, as these players were discussing quietly, another group of people entered the hall. The moment these people arrived, everyone's attention immediately turned toward them. This was because the newcomers were none other than the Azure Chamber of Commerce's Duan family. Chapter 2361 Gathering of Bigshots. The Duan family had not sent a lot of people to this competition, only a dozen or so. Their number was far fewer than that of the various superpowers. However, when the attendees present saw the pale white, middle-aged man at the head of the group, they all revealed surprised expressions. The ice demon Duan Han. He actually came too. This is going to be interesting. The ice demon's combat standards are not the slightest bit inferior to Hermit's. In fact, he is even stronger than Hermit in a frontal confrontation. Moreover, unlike Hermit, who maintains a neutral stance in Azure, Duan Han is famous for his partisanship. The faces of the various superpowers members shone with anticipation when they saw the man leading the Duan family's group. Duan Hanshan was the strongest person of the Duan family's second generation. His position in Azure rivaled that of the assassin hermit. He had been fighting in the Western continent all this time, and his fame over there surpassed even hermits. Although Duan Hanshan was nicknamed the Ice Demon, his short temper was well known among the various superpowers. Meanwhile, after stepping into the hall, Duan Hanshan did not head toward the VIP seats. Instead, he walked up to Shi Feng, the chilling aura he radiated making the various superpowers refinement realm experts shudder involuntarily. "You're that black flame that killed prideful brute at the checkpoint?" Duan Hanshan asked coldly as he glared at Shi Feng. Upon hearing Duan Hanshan's question, everyone present revealed looks that suggested they had expected such a situation to arise. Although they were currently inside the auction house and within Azure's territory, Duan Hanshan would not care about etiquette. If Shi Feng gave him an unsatisfactory reply, Duan Hanshan would definitely take action. "That's right. Do you have business with me?" Shi Feng nodded, not evading Duan Hanshan's question at all. His nonchalant reply also made it seem as if the killing intent Duan Hanshan radiated was non-existent. Upon hearing Shi Feng's words, everyone present gasped involuntarily. Is this guy nuts? He's still trying to act tough at this point? A blue-clad assassin youth who was also in the second-floor hall, stared at Shi Feng in shock. Duan Hanshan was known for being an unstoppable killing machine over in the Western continent. This was why he was nicknamed Ice Demon. Even the guild leaders of the various superpowers had to show respect when meeting him. Shi Feng, however, behaved as if he had nothing to do with this matter. He probably doesn't know about the Ice Demon. After all, Zero Wing is developing in a small kingdom. It shouldn't know much about matters in the Western continent, said Jade Bamboo from beside the assassin youth. She too had been surprised at Shi Feng's reply. However, now that he has spoken to Ice Demon that way, he's definitely doomed. Hermit maintained a neutral stance in the Azure Chamber of Commerce, so it was only normal for him to ignore the quarrels between the two main families and prioritize the chamber's benefits above all else. However, that was not the case for Duan Hanshan at all. Meanwhile, as soon as Shi Feng finished speaking, Duan Hanshan's killing intent skyrocketed in intensity, putting a powerful pressure on the spectating crowd. "Good. Young man, you're very brave. It seems that if I don't take some action in the Eastern continent, nobody will place the Azure Chamber of Commerce in their eyes in the future." Duan Hanshan exclaimed wrathfully. Mana started gathering around him, the ambient temperature plummeting. Black Flame is doomed now. At this moment, everyone understood that Duan Hanshan was thoroughly enraged. With this, even Silent Melody and Cloud Hunter would be powerless to save Black Flame. After all, quite a few of those standing behind Duan Hanshan were peak experts. They would have no problem holding Cloud Hunter back for a short period. However, just when everyone thought a battle would break out between Shi Feng and Duan Hanshan, a deep and powerful voice echoed throughout the entire hall. "Old Ice, are you planning on breaking the chamber's rules?" When everyone turned to look at the origin of this voice, what they saw was a man in dark gray armor, who seemed to be in his early 50s. The aura this man radiated was not the slightest bit weaker than that of Duan Hanshan. It daunted the nearby refinement realm experts, deterring them from approaching him. "Third uncle, why are you here?" Silent Wonder asked in confusion when she saw this middle-aged man. This stalwart, middle-aged man was none other than Long Xianglong, one of the Long family's second-generation leaders. He was also one of Azure's Grand Elders and was Silent Wonder's third uncle. As Long Xianglong was addicted to improving his combat standards, he had not bothered himself with the chamber's matters in a very long time. "Your father has some other matters to take care of and cannot attend this competition, so he asked me to come in his place," Long Xianglong said, a rare smile appearing on his face when he looked at Silent Wonder. He then turned to look at Duan Hanshan. "Old Ice, Azure is holding an important competition here today. Are you still planning on taking action here? Or are you telling me that you've already forgotten about the chamber's rules?" At Long Xianglong's words, Duan Hanshan's complexion darkened. "Lunatic Long, I'll step back out of respect for you this time. However, if there is a next time, your people won't be as lucky," Duan Hanshan said. After glaring at Shi Feng, he promptly turned around and left. Upon seeing this, Cloud Hunter breathed a deep sigh of relief. At the same time, he was also speechless at Shi Feng's bravery. It was fortunate that Long Xianglong appeared. While attacking an invited guest within Azure's territory was indeed against Azure's rules, if Duan Hanshan was intent on taking action, even Cloud Hunter was not confident of stopping the Ice Demon. However, Long Xianglong was Duan Hanshan's equal in strength. Moreover, the rules were on Long Xianglong's side. If Duan Hanshan took action, he would definitely end up getting himself punished. After seeing Duan Hanshan leave, Long Xianglong turned his gaze away from the ice demon and walked up to Shifeng. "Young man, you shouldn't act so impulsively next time. That old ice demon usually does whatever he wants," Long Xianglong admonished Shifeng slightly. Very quickly, however, he shifted his attention to Silent Wonder and said, "Wonder, your grandfather has constantly been thinking about you. If not for the competition this time, he would have most likely called you back already. Once this competition is over, return with me." From the previous scene, Long Xianglong understood that Shifeng was a very impulsive person. If he allowed his niece to remain in Zero Wing, it would only be a matter of time before disaster befell her. Return? No. I wish to stay in Zero Wing and continue my development there. In any case, Owl and Big Sis Silk are more than enough to handle the chamber's affairs. It doesn't matter whether I return or not, Silent Wonder said, shaking her head. Moreover, I'm developing very well. Nonsense. Your talents are second only to Silk Moon's. It might be fine if it were before, but after this competition, the struggle between the two main families will come to an end. Regardless of today's outcome, you will receive the chamber's full support. At that time, your improvement speed will definitely exceed your current rate, Long Xianglong said as he glared in exasperation at Silent Wonder. The Azure Chamber of Commerce's resources far surpassed that of ordinary superpowers. The future Silent Wonder could have in Azure would be many times better than if she remained in Zero Wing. In fact, remaining in Zero Wing would be a complete and utter waste of her talents. Moreover, the Long family's third generation still needed some strong pillars to support it. Simply relying on Burning Owl and Silk Moon wouldn't be enough. Third uncle, I've already decided. Moreover, I feel that Zero Wing is quite good. Stop trying to persuade me, Silent Wonder said, shaking her head. She was determined to stick to her decision. Just as Long Xianglong was about to launch another round of persuasion, a fresh group of players arrived, inducing gasps throughout the hall. This was because these players were members of Giant's Heart, a superpower that had thoroughly shaken the foundations of the Fire Dragon Empire and was capable of contending against the Super Guild Pride Empire. In fact, when comparing them purely in terms of naval prowess, Giant's Heart was superior to Pride Empire. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Nowadays, the various superpowers were placing extreme emphasis on their naval development. Since Giant's Heart possessed exceedingly great naval prowess, it had naturally become the target of partnership for many other superpowers. Meanwhile, the person leading Giant's Heart's group this time was none other than White Autumn, one of Giant's Heart's vice guild leaders, who was currently a megastar in the Fire Dragon Empire. At the same time, he was an existence that the various superpowers feared greatly because he had gained the sea god's blessing and possessed near unrivaled strength out at sea. During these past few days, White Autumn's existence alone had inflicted a lot of major losses on Pride Empire. When White Autumn entered the hall, the upper echelons of the various attending superpowers promptly surged forward to greet him. Azure's Duan Hanshan and Long Xianglong even took the initiative to greet White Autumn in an attempt to bridge the distance between Giant's Heart and the Azure Chamber of Commerce. However, after making small talk with the other attendees for a short time, White Autumn suddenly walked up to Shifeng. "Greetings, Guild Leader Black Flame. I am White Autumn, one of Giant's Heart's vice guild leaders. I've heard a lot about you. I feel joyful that I finally get to meet you today," White Autumn greeted Shifeng in a very friendly manner. Chapter 2362, She's an Advanced Master Alchemist too? Silence. Chuck. For a time, everyone in the hall was stunned. White Autumn was one of Giant's Heart's vice guild leaders as well as one of the strongest individuals in the Fire Dragon Empire. After he obtained the sea god's blessing, his strength had further skyrocketed. Nowadays, he was an existence that even the guild leaders of the various superpowers wished to befriend. Now, however, White Autumn had actually taken the initiative to greet Shifeng. Let alone the various superpowers' upper echelons, even Long Xianglong and Duan Hanshan could not help looking confused at this scene. In their opinion, Shifeng was merely the guild leader of a pseudo-superpower. Even if Zero Wing had a lot of potential, it would still take a long time to become a superpower. Moreover, even if it eventually became a superpower, it still wouldn't warrant the attention of someone like White Autumn. Could that kid have some kind of relationship with Giant's Heart? Duan Hanshan guessed as he took in Shifeng's calm expression. White Autumn was an existence that even the Duan family fervently wished to befriend. After all, Giant's Heart possessed extraordinary strength out at sea. In the future, when the various powers of the two main continents interacted more frequently, maritime trade would be unavoidable. So, he still has such a backer. It's no wonder he paid no heed to Old Ice's questioning. Long Xianglong also started observing Shifeng. He had never thought that Shifeng would have such a connection. If Shifeng had Giant's Heart supporting him, with the Azure Chamber of Commerce's current attitude toward Giant's Heart, Duanhanshan definitely wouldn't dare to casually take action against Shifeng. Although the Ice Demon was short-tempered, he was no fool. He knew when he should take action and when he should restrain himself. A short distance away, Jade Bamboo and the blue-clad assassin beside her were dazed for quite some time after seeing White Autumn greeting Shifeng. When they snapped out of their daze, however, realization immediately dawned upon them. Previously they had been curious as to why Hermit had spared Shifeng so easily. Looking at it now, Hermit must have known about the relationship between Shifeng and Giant's Heart. Meanwhile, in response to White Autumn's greeting, Shifeng simply nodded and said, "Vice Guild Leader White, you're too courteous." In reality, Shifeng was also somewhat surprised that White Autumn had taken the initiative to greet him. After all, his current identity was Black Flame, not Yi Feng. Moreover, he had only helped White Autumn complete a quest and receive the Sea God's blessing. This amount of help should not warrant White Autumn's enthusiastic welcome. "Guild Leader Black Flame, I am not being courteous at all," White Autumn said, shaking his head. In a serious tone he continued, "Currently Giant's Heart has captured a relatively excellent town over at Dark Moon Lake, outside the Fire Dragon Empire. We wish to form a partnership with Zero Wing for this town. May I know if Guild Leader Black Flame is interested?" As soon as White Autumn finished speaking, gasps filled the hall once more. As for Long Xianglong and Duanhanshan, they both gaped in shock at this scene, their minds blank with disbelief. The area around Dark Moon Lake was a fat piece of meat that many powers were eyeing. Not only was it a neutral map, but it was even connected to the sea, a location without many developmental restrictions. Dark Moon Town had the potential to become a large-scale port city. At that time, the income generated from the city would be several times higher than that from NPC port cities. Hence, many of the Fire Dragon Empire's superpowers had tried to capture Dark Moon Town. In the end, however, it was White Autumn who succeeded. Moreover, he had even served Pride Empire a huge loss while doing so. Now, however, White Autumn wanted to form a partnership with Shifeng. Dark Moon Town? Zero Wing is naturally very interested in this partnership, Shifeng said, although he too was very surprised by White Autumn's suggestion. Shifeng was relatively familiar with Dark Moon Town, or more precisely with Dark Moon City. In his previous life, Dark Moon City had been the largest player-operated port city in the vicinity of the Fire Dragon Empire. It had practically been the lifeline linking the Fire Dragon Empire with the sea. The prices of the shops and lands inside Dark Moon City had rivaled even those of imperial capitals. Back then, Giant's Heart ruled over Dark Moon City as well, and countless powers wished to form a partnership with the guild. Unfortunately for them, very few powers actually succeeded. During the time Shifeng and White Autumn were hashing out the details of their partnership, everyone present was thoroughly stupefied, especially Duanhanshan and Long Xianglong. Shock and confusion filled their hearts. They even wondered if they were dreaming. Who is he? The Fire Dragon Empire's various superpowers were desperately seeking to cooperate with Giant's Heart on Dark Moon Town. Now, however, White Autumn was proposing a partnership with Shifeng. This was simply absurd. Aside from Duanhanshan and Long Xianglong, Burning Owl and Cold Memories Group were also astonished by this scene. "Big Sis, what kind of relationship does your guild have with Giant's Heart?" Burning Owl asked Silent Wonder. Even though Burning Owl had just arrived in the Eastern Continent, he knew about Dark Moon Town and its importance because one of his tasks in coming to the Eastern Continent this time was to negotiate a partnership with Giant's Heart regarding Dark Moon Town. However, there were simply too many superpowers eyeing Dark Moon Town, so even with the Azure Chamber of Commerce's backing, he was not particularly confident in his chances. Now, however, Cold Memory and South Dream were also eager to hear the answer to Burning Owl's question. They knew for a fact that Shifeng was a Tier 3 player. However, they never considered that Zero Wing might still possess a foundation so powerful that it would warrant Giant's Heart's active solicitation. This was something even Dark Pursuit was incapable of accomplishing. I don't know either. Silent Wonder was also confused by this situation. Meanwhile, White Autumn himself paid no heed whatsoever to the shock everyone felt at his actions. He had personally witnessed Zero Wing's strength before, particularly its Crimson Dragon flying ship. The flying ship's performance exceeded his expectations entirely. Meanwhile, after seeing Shi Feng now, he was even more certain that his decision to partner with Zero Wing was a wise one. Due to the sea god's blessing, White Autumn's perception toward life aura and danger had improved significantly. When looking at Shi Feng, he actually felt a deadly threat. Moreover, he could also tell that Shi Feng's life aura was stronger than his own. The only explanation he could think of for this situation was that Shi Feng was a Tier 3 player. In a period where none of the various superpowers possessed even one Tier 3 player, Zero Wing actually had two. He simply did not know what to say about this situation. Elder Hans, this is going to be troublesome. Silent Wonder is a member of Zero Wing. Now that Zero Wing is proven to have a close relationship with Giant's Heart, the Long family will have an easier time partnering with Giant's Heart. A youth standing behind Duan Hans said worriedly. What's there to worry about? So what if the Long family gets to partner with Giant's Heart? The most important point is who will get to rule Azure. Even if Zero Wing has a good relationship with Giant's Heart, that won't help the Long family or Silent Wonder win the upcoming competition, Duan Hans retorted. Although the Long family's Silk Moon had also joined the famous Dark Pursuit as a lifestyle player, the time she joined Dark Pursuit was much shorter compared to Yan Xiaoqian's. Moreover, Yan Xiaoqian was almost as talented as Silk Moon. In such a situation, it would be impossible for Silk Moon to beat Yan Xiaoqian. While Duan Hans was saying so, another group of players arrived in the second-floor hall. Similar to the arrival of Giant's Heart's group, the arrival of this group of players caused quite a commotion because it consisted of Dark Pursuit's members. Not only was the lowest-leveled player among them level 100, but the equipment they possessed was also something that could make even the upper echelons of the various superpowers envious. Of the dozen or so Dark Pursuit members that entered the hall, even the worst equipped among them had 3 pieces of epic equipment paired up with a 6-piece, level 95 Dark Gold set equipment. The most eye-catching among these players were undoubtedly the 2 heroic women walking in the lead. One of these women was Silk Moon, a cursemancer that possessed a mature and seductive charm. Silk Moon's appearance and figure were not the slightest bit inferior to Silent Wonder's. The other tall and graceful woman was Yan Xiaoqian. However, unlike Silk Moon's mature appearance, Yan Xiaoqian looked to be only 18 years old. Both women were actually geared in the Elven Light set, an 8-piece set of level 95 Dark Gold equipment, currently the best set equipment available for magical classes. The other pieces of equipment they wore were all epic rank. Amazing. Truly amazing. So this is Dark Pursuit's foundations? The Elven Light set. Dark Pursuit is really going all out for the competition this time. It seems the winner of this competition is going to be one of these two. I know, right? I heard that Dark Pursuit invested all its available resources into nurturing the two of them. Although the Long family's and Duan family's other heirs are excellent, these two are on a completely different level. The various superpowers' upper echelons were green with envy as they looked at Silk Moon and Yan Xiaoqian. The Elven Light set was currently the strongest Dark Gold set equipment available for magical class players. None of the various superpowers present had managed to complete even a single set yet. However, Dark Pursuit actually had 2. This was simply unbelievable. With the arrival of Dark Pursuit's group, all 6 representatives of the Long family and Duan family were finally present. A short moment later, an elegant, middle-aged man walked to the center of the hall. This man was none other than Hermit, the manager of the Dark Hills. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for attending the Azure Chamber of Commerce's alchemy competition today, Hermit said. I believe everyone present has been waiting for quite some time now, so I'll dispense with the pleasantries. The competition this time will be very simple. Participants will have to produce as many meditation souls, an intermediate master potion, as possible within the given time frame. However, there is a precondition for those seeking to participate in the competition. They must be an intermediate master alchemist at the very minimum. Those who do not meet this requirement may not participate in the competition, so all participants, please show your alchemist insignias. Upon hearing the rules, the various spectators gasped involuntarily. Setting aside the meditation soul's production difficulty, just the condition of intermediate mastery would already leave countless alchemist players in despair. The requirements of this competition are really high. I bet that more than half of the participants will be disqualified because of this condition. Cold Memory was astonished when she heard Hermit's words. Nurturing an intermediate master alchemist was easier said than done. This was a task that even Dark Pursuit found difficult. Despite being very talented herself, Cold Memory was still a long way from the intermediate master rank. Needless to say, others would have an even more difficult time attaining it. In the next moment, just like Cold Memory anticipated, the Long family's first representative revealed that he was only a basic master alchemist. As for the Duan family's heirs, Duan Ing and Duan Qingfeng, they too were only basic master alchemists. Although they would be extremely talented geniuses in the eyes of the various superpowers, they failed to meet the minimum requirement for participation in this competition. When it was Yan Xiaoqian's turn, she proudly took out an insignia with 3 silver moons. Upon seeing this insignia, the spectating crowd gasped in shock. Advanced Master rank? She's actually an Advanced Master Alchemist. How is this possible? Our guild doesn't even have an Intermediate Master, yet she's actually an Advanced Master already? The various superpowers were filled with an indescribable sense of shock and envy at this scene. After all, the abilities an Advanced Master could exhibit were far greater than those of an Intermediate Master. Furthermore, an Advanced Master could produce Advanced Master potions, which would be extremely useful when exploring new maps in the future. However, shortly after Yan Xiaoqian flaunted her insignia, the Long family's Silk Moon also took out an insignia with 3 silver moons on it, shocking the spectating crowd once more. 2 Advanced Master Alchemists. How powerful is Dark Pursuit? Advanced Master Alchemists. Sure enough, everyone else is no match for these 2 women. The various superpowers were left breathless by this revelation. At the same time, they also started growing fearful of Dark Pursuit's foundations. Big Sis Silk really is amazing. With this, we at least have a 50% chance of winning. Burning Owl sighed in relief when he saw Silk Moon's alchemist insignia. The latest information he had received said that Yan Xiaoqian had been promoted into an Advanced Master Alchemist already while Silk Moon was still trying. Hence, he had been considerably worried until this point. Now that Silk Moon had become an Advanced Master Alchemist as well, both the Long family and Duan family could be said to be on the same starting line. It's a pity that Wonder did not join Dark Pursuit. Otherwise, she would also have had a chance at becoming an Advanced Master Alchemist before this competition, and our chances of winning will be much greater. Cold Memory was relatively confident in her own guild's strength. However, as Silent Wonder was determined to stay in Zero Wing, Cold Memory couldn't do anything about it. This is already good enough. At least, it is much better than our initial expectations, South Dream said, chuckling. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Yushi caught up? Yan Xiaoqian reflexively took an extra glance at Silk Moon. She had never thought that Silk Moon would actually succeed in catching up with her. While everyone was wondering who between Yan Xiaoqian or Silk Moon would win this competition, Silent Wonder also took out an alchemist insignia with 3 silver moons on it from her bag. Impossible. She's an Advanced Master Alchemist too. Chapter 2363. Shocking. The venue's silence filled the competition venue as everyone stared at Silent Wonder's Triple Moon Alchemist insignia. They could all understand Silk Moon and Yan Xiaoqian becoming Advanced Master Alchemists, but none of them could fathom how Silent Wonder had become one as well. It wasn't easy to reach Advanced Master rank. Even now, very few of God's domain superpowers had successfully nurtured an Advanced Master Alchemist, yet Zero Wing had. It was utterly unbelievable. How is this possible? Cold Memory was shocked to see Silent Wonder's Advanced Master Alchemist insignia. How has she been promoted so quickly? Completing the requirements to become an Advanced Master Alchemist was easier said than done. Aside from talent, the rare resources required for research and experimentation were more than enough to give any superpower a huge headache. Dark Pursuit had only been able to supply these resources due to its control in the Moon God's world and access to precious alchemical resources. This was why Cold Memory was so confident in Dark Pursuit's ability to nurture Advanced Master Alchemists. Any other superpower would likely run out of materials before one of its alchemists could reach Advanced Master rank. Zero Wing had the research workshop, but that only provided guidelines to assist the guild's lifestyle players. In doing so, it would only slightly reduce the amount of materials one would need for their experiments. Moreover, Silent Wonder had been some time away from reaching Advanced Master rank during their last meeting. She hadn't progressed as far as Silk Moon and Yan Xiaoqian, who had stood before the threshold to Advanced Master rank. Even as talented as Silent Wonder was, she should have needed another fortnight to complete her promotion, yet she had caught up with Silk Moon and Yan Xiaoqian in less than a week. Cold Memory couldn't imagine how Zero Wing had helped her accomplish the feat. Even Silk Moon and Yan Xiaoqian, who stood beside Silent Wonder, were astonished. Little Sis actually succeeded? Silk Moon could not help but glance at Shi Feng, who watched from the spectator stands with a soft smile. It seems Zero Wing is quite capable after all. Silk Moon knew better than anyone here how difficult it was to reach advanced master rank. One needed talent and resources. Anyone who said otherwise was either lying or a fool. An advanced master alchemist. Ah, this girl is quite impressive. Long Xianglong laughed when he saw the alchemist insignia in Silent Wonder's hand. Now he was even more determined to take the girl with him to the Western continent. Even without a superpower support, Silent Wonder had become an advanced master alchemist. She proved to be frighteningly talented. Long Xianglong acknowledged that Zero Wing had played a massive role in his niece's success, but how could such a small guild compete with the Azure Chamber of Commerce's resources? When the Duan family's members saw that Silent Wonder was also an advanced master alchemist, they watched on with grim expressions. Although the final victor would decide the competition's outcome, the fact that the Long family had one more advanced master alchemist than they did gave their competitor an edge. Why are you so worried? She's merely an advanced master alchemist, Duan Hanshan said as he eyed the people around him. So what if she's a talented alchemist? This competition won't be won on alchemy standards alone. The competition would determine which of the two families had a stronger heir. Even though this was an alchemy competition, it wasn't any ordinary battle between alchemists. High alchemy standards would provide an advantage, but combat power would also play a significant role. The participants would have to fight for the materials they needed. If they weren't strong enough in combat, they wouldn't secure enough materials, and without materials, how were they supposed to brew the required potion? With Duan Hanshan's comment, realization dawned on the other Duan family members. After all was said and done, this competition would rely on the strength of the competitors' backers. In this regard, Zero Wing was no match for Dark Pursuit. While everyone chatted amongst themselves, Hermit, who had inspected all 6 participants' insignias, spoke again. Since the remaining participants have met the minimum requirements, let's officially begin this competition. As you all know, the participants are required to produce Meditation Soul Potions, an intermediate master potion. However, participants must earn their required materials, Hermit explained as he gestured to an approaching group of players. These players carried gigantic cages into the venue, all containing incredibly powerful beasts. He then turned to Silk Moon, Yen Xiaoqian and Silent Wonder. You will face these level 100 wild beasts. You will earn more materials by defeating stronger monsters. Of the monsters we've prepared, the weakest is a lord. For defeating this monster you'll acquire 3 sets of materials. The next monster is a high lord and you'll earn 6 sets for defeating it. You will not be required to defeat the level 100 Great Lord, but if you survive against it for 10 minutes, you'll receive 10 sets of materials. If you survive for 10 minutes against the level 100 Grand Lord, you'll receive 20 sets of materials. However, you will only have one chance to challenge a monster, so choose wisely. As Hermit finished his explanation, a commotion erupted in the venue. The Azure Chamber of Commerce is so generous. It's captured so many level 100 wild beasts. Crap. Isn't this challenge a little too difficult? Not even level 100 Refinement Realm experts can defeat a level 100 Lord one-on-one, yet it's the weakest monster here. Do the participants even stand a chance? The various superpowers felt a cold chill when they saw Azure's level 100 wild beasts. Capturing wild beasts to tame as mounts was extremely difficult, especially at such a high level. Ordinary powers couldn't afford to spare the amount of manpower the task would require, yet Azure used these precious level 100 wild beasts to test its heir's strength. Even the various superpowers upper echelons thought this competition was absurdly difficult. At this stage of the game, level 100 peak experts would, at most, be strong enough to challenge a level 100 High Lord. If they encountered a level 100 Great Lord alone, they'd have no choice but to flee. Even worse, lifestyle players had far less combat power than actual combat players. Whether or not Silk Moon and the others could fight a level 100 Lord was already questionable, not to mention a High Lord. The various superpowers members couldn't help but glance at Silent Wonder in pity. Of the 3 remaining participants, only Silent Wonder was under level 100. Other experts might be impressed that she had reached level 99, but it put her at an overwhelming disadvantage in this competition. Although there was only one level between level 99 and 100, the difference between the strength one could command at those levels was tremendous. A level 100 player would have far more control and flexibility than a level 99 player, and the difference between the basic attributes provided by equipment was just as drastic. I had never thought you'd become an advanced master alchemist before the competition as well. Had you joined Dark Pursuit, we might have been rivals in this competition. However, it seems you'll just be watching from the sidelines, Yan Xiaoqian said, chuckling. If you have to assign blame, blame yourself for being so stubborn. Rather than accept Dark Pursuit's invitation, you chose to remain with a non-superpower like Zero Wing. Everyone has constantly compared Silent Wonder and Yan Xiaoqian, assuming one of them would win this competition. However, their guilds were simply on different levels. Now, only Silk Moon had a chance of giving Yan Xiaoqian a run for her money. Silk Moon was powerful in every aspect and had been known as an unrivaled genius. Unfortunately, she had become quite strange after surviving an illness a few years ago. Now Yan Xiaoqian didn't even think of Silk Moon as a competitor. Cold Memory and South Dream watched the three participants, frustrated. They had thought Silent Wonder had a significantly higher chance of winning now that she had become an advanced master alchemist, but even they would struggle in this competition, not to mention Silent Wonder. Pick a difficulty. Remember, you only have one opportunity. You won't get a second chance, Hermit told the three young women before him. This trial wasn't a simple test of strength. It would also test the participants' understanding of their strength. I choose the High Lord, Silk Moon said after giving the matter some thought. I choose the High Lord as well, Yan Xiaoqian said without hesitation. Hearing Silk Moon and Yan Xiaoqian's decision, Hermit nodded, satisfied. He then turned to Silent Wonder, curious about which beast the girl would choose. Although Silent Wonder hadn't yet reached level 100, she should have a chance against a level 100 Lord. If she could defeat it, she'd still have a chance at victory. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. I wonder which difficulty Silent Wonder will choose? Is that necessary? She'll definitely challenge the Lord. That's her only hope. If she tries to face the High Lord, she'll likely die after a single hit. I guess you're right. She's talented, but it's a pity she only has Zero Wing's support. If she were backed by a superpower, even an ordinary one, she might have had a chance against Silk Moon and Yan Xiaoqian. Quietly, the audience discussed Silent Wonder's situation, glancing at Sure Feng with mocking sneers. So what if Zero Wing were supported by Giant's Heart? In the end, Zero Wing's weakness would be exposed before them all. While everyone softly talked among themselves, Silent Wonder had made her decision and looked at Hermit, announcing, I choose the Grand Lord. Chapter 2364, Overwhelming Strength, a Grand Lord. She's lost her mind. That's a level 100 Grand Lord we're talking about. What arrogance! Has she never witnessed a level 100 Grand Lord's strength before? Even Domain Realm experts would have to flee from such a monster. When they heard Silent Wonder's decision, everyone felt that she had gone mad and was hopelessly optimistic. Why else would she make such a foolish, insane choice? Even the various superpowers expert teams had trouble with level 100 monsters at this stage of the game. No player could solo a level 100 Great Lord, much less a Grand Lord. Wonder is being too impulsive. Long Xianglong could only shake his head and sigh at his niece's decision. Although Hermit had presented 4 choices for the competition, as someone who had fought in level 100 neutral maps, he knew that there were really only 2 viable difficulties. The bit about surviving for 10 minutes was a joke. Level 100 peak experts wouldn't even survive more than 3 minutes against a level 100 Great Lord, much less against a Grand Lord. Moreover, Silent Wonder and the others were lifestyle players, who rarely engaged in combat. What is Wonder thinking? Even if she's trying to improve Zero Wing's prestige, does she really need to choose a Grand Lord to do it? Cold Memory muttered, baffled. Cold Memory understood the reason behind Silent Wonder's decision. Many of the spectators here lamented over the fact that Zero Wing, not a superpower, backed her. She must have found these opinions offensive and chose to challenge a Grand Lord to prove Zero Wing's strength. However, Cold Memory was confused that Silent Wonder had chosen the Grand Lord instead of the Great Lord. She had better chances against the Great Lord, even if they were still quite slim, than she had against a Grand Lord. Now she was simply making a fool of herself. Are you certain that you wish to challenge the Grand Lord, Wonder? Hermit, who was just as surprised by the girl's decision, asked for confirmation. Before the trial, Azure's Grand Elders had tested the challenge's viability. They had come to the conclusion that the highest difficulty challenge would be utterly impossible for current players. That's right. I choose to challenge a Grand Lord, Silent Wonder declared. Both Silk Moon and Yan Xiaoqian gave Silent Wonder strange looks. They had never thought that her choice was a serious one. It seems you'll never change, Wonder. It's a pity that you'll only find yourself in a dead end, Yan Xiaoqian said. She understood that Silent Wonder was attempting to save herself from a hopeless situation, but her opponent wasn't aware of how terrifying a level 100 Grand Lord really was. She, on the other hand, had encountered such a monster personally when she had accompanied her guild's main force on an expedition. All right. Since you three have chosen, we'll begin the competition according to the original order, Hermit said. He could see Silent Wonder's determination, so he didn't try to dissuade her. A group of players then brought a 4-meter-tall cage into the venue. As the cage opened, a 3-tailed flaming tiger burst forth. As it did, Azure's members activated the magic array they had set up earlier, trapping the flaming tiger within. Not only did this magic barrier prevent the flaming tiger from escaping, but it also suppressed the flaming tiger's recovery speed. It was considered a bonus to the challengers. 3-tailed flaming tiger. Wild beast High Lord, level 100 HP 42, 000, 000/42, 000, 000. The moment the flaming tiger emerged from its cage, every player in the venue felt an intense pressure bear down on them. Moreover, the temperature within the magic barrier rose due to the flaming tiger's body. It caused steam to rise, obscuring the space inside the barrier. However, Yin Xiaoqian, the competition's first challenger, was unfazed by the monster, and she slowly and steadily walked toward it. The instant Yin Xiaoqian entered the barrier, the flaming tiger roared and pounced, displaying such incredible speed that it made many of the Tier 2 experts in the venue nervous. The flaming tiger's movement speed was easily higher than that of a Tier 2 assassin. The flaming tiger swiped a paw at Yin Xiaoqian, and in response she lifted her staff, summoning a thick ice wall between her and the High Lord. Even when the flaming tiger struck the ice wall, it suffered hardly any damage. What powerful attributes! Is this the might of the Elven Light set? Everyone watched in astonishment as Yin Xiaoqian effortlessly blocked the flaming tiger's attack. They were all aware of how powerful a level 100 High Lord was. Even a level 100 Tier 2 metric tons would struggle to tank one. The task would usually require 2 MTs. Yin Xiaoqian, however, had stopped the flaming tiger's assault with a simple spell. What amazing Tier 2 silent casting! Yin Xiaoqian's ice wall even surprised Cold Memory. The young woman hadn't cast the ordinary Tier 1 ice wall. Rather, Yin Xiaoqian had cast the Tier 2 spell Enchanted Ice Wall, a magically enhanced version of the Tier 1 ice wall. Of course, due to how complex Tier 2 spells were, they were difficult to cast without a chant. Even if an elementalist succeeded to do so without a chant, their completion rate would suffer, reducing the spell's power in turn. And yet, despite casting the spell without a chant, Yin Xiaoqian's ice wall was strong enough to stop the flaming tiger. Her success was a testament to her high spell completion rate. Seeing this, Cold Memory couldn't help but feel inferior when it came to mental fortitude and control over mana. Seeing that its attack had failed, the flaming tiger circled the ice wall, but Yin Xiaoqian didn't give it the opportunity. She immediately summoned several more ice walls, surrounding the flame tiger. She then double-speed cast her Tier 2 spells, Earthen Spike and Frostwheel arrows. With nowhere to run, both attacks slammed into the flaming tiger, and damages of over -100,000 appeared above the High Lord's head, one after another. The flaming tiger tried to break through the ice walls, but Yin Xiaoqian replaced the destroyed ice walls almost instantly. When the flaming tiger did manage to break free and attack Yin Xiaoqian, she activated Blink and teleported to a safe distance. She would then create another line of ice walls, steadily draining the High Lord's HP. The young elementalist's performance stunned the various superpowers experts. They had never dreamed that a player could toy with a level 100 High Lord like this. The way she smoothly transitioned from spell to spell was particularly impressive. It almost looked like she gracefully danced across the battlefield as she attacked and evaded. Many of the peak experts felt their scalps tingle as they watched. In the end, Yin Xiaoqian killed the 3-tailed flaming tiger in less than 15 minutes. After Yin Xiaoqian emerged from the barrier, it was Silk Moon's turn. She also had to face a 3-tailed flaming tiger, but since she was a Cursemancer, her attack power wasn't as high as Yin Xiaoqian's, an elementalist. Even so, Silk Moon's performance stunned the crowd as well. During her battle with the flaming tiger, she cast a variety of spells to reduce the High Lord's mobility, reaction speed, strength, and agility. To everyone's surprise, Silk Moon was also a domain realm expert. Once she had weakened the flaming tiger, the Cursemancer toyed with it as if she were playing with a kitten. Although Silk Moon's fight had lasted 5 minutes longer than Yin Xiaoqian's, she had seemed far more relaxed than her opponent. After the battle, the spectators burst into a heated discussion. Shortly after Silk Moon's fight, Azure's members brought in a 10-meter-tall cage, which attracted everyone's attention immediately. Before they opened the cage, Azure's members strengthened the magic array, which became so powerful that the mana density around it increased slightly. As the cage opened, a 9-meter-tall bear walked onto the battlefield. It was covered in pitch-black fur and runes hovered around its body. When the crowd felt the bear's frightening aura, they felt chills crawl down their spines. Dark Moon Bear, Wild Beast, Grand Lord, Level 100 HP 210, 000/210, 000. It's so strong. So, this is a level 100 Grand Lord? How is this supposed to be a fair fight? That thing can likely kill peak MTs with a single slap. Few of these experts had ever seen a level 100 Grand Lord, and they couldn't help but gasp when they saw the Dark Moon Bear. If not for the magic array that trapped the wild beast, they might have fled from the venue. Wonder, it's your turn now, but it's not too late to give up, Hermit gently told Silent Wonder. No individual player could deal with a creature as strong as the Dark Moon Bear. Not only would players have to fight as a team to defeat this monstrosity, but they'd also have to rely on a magic array to suppress it. Trying to survive against the unsuppressed Dark Moon Bear for 10 minutes was utterly impossible for a level 99 Tier 2 player. However, Silent Wonder ignored Hermit's advice as she approached the magic barrier. She's insane. I wonder how many hits she'll last? Hits? You think she can last more than one? That's a level 100 Grand Lord we're talking about. My guild's chief MT underestimated a level 100 Grand Lord once, and he died after 2 hits. The team's healers didn't even have a chance to heal him. What can an elementalist like her possibly do? As everyone watched Silent Wonder walk toward the barrier, they were certain that she had some mental issues. As far as they were concerned, trying to fight such a powerful beast was suicidal. Guild leader Black Flame, will Miss Wonder really be alright against the Dark Moon Bear? White Autumn asked as he watched. He knew that Surefoam was a Tier 3 player, but Silent Wonder wasn't. White Autumn wouldn't even be confident of lasting more than 10 minutes against the Grand Lord if he hadn't obtained the Sea God's blessing. Meanwhile, Silent Wonder's life aura wasn't particularly powerful, which proved that she only had an ordinary legacy. White Autumn doubted she'd even last 1 minute, much less 10. Relax. She knows what she's doing, Surefoam said, chuckling. As soon as Surefoam said that, Silent Wonder crossed the magic barrier. Almost simultaneously, the Dark Moon Bear charged at her, its frightening aura startling some of the Apex experts watching the fight. However, Silent Wonder held her composure. She simply removed her black cloak, revealing her crimson robes, and retrieved a resplendent staff from her bag, equipping it. As soon as she did, all of the mana within the barrier swarmed toward her as if she were this space's true queen. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Before the Dark Moon Bear could reach Silent Wonder, she lightly swung her staff. Answering her call, mana surged toward the tip of her staff, transforming into a flaming spear that shot toward the Grand Lord. The fire spear was so fast that not even the Dark Moon Bear had time to react. Boom! As the fiery weapon and the pitch-black bear collided, a flaming pillar enveloped the Dark Moon Bear, its flames so powerful that it shook the magic barrier. When the flames subsided, the Dark Moon Bear slid to an abrupt halt. Chapter 2365, Humanoid Monster. Although the Dark Moon Bear had simply halted its charge as a result of Silent Wonder's attack, the spectating crowd gaped in shock. As if time had stopped, silence fell over the competition venue. How is that possible? What did she do? Even Duan Hans Han, Long Xianglong, and White Autumn were shocked, not to mention the various superpowers experts. Even a 100-man team of level 100 Tier 2 experts would be annihilated if they tried to challenge a level 100 Grand Lord without a magic array, yet Silent Wonder stood against such a beast alone. Despite being only level 99, Silent Wonder had stopped the Dark Moon Beast's charge with a single spell. It was unbelievable. Since when has Wonder been able to silent cast Tier 2 spells so proficiently? Cold Memory stared at the smoking Dark Moon Bear, confused. Although the power of Silent Wonder's spell had surprised Cold Memory, she was more surprised by the young elementalist's silent casting. When one cast a spell without chanting, they sacrificed a significant percentage of their spell completion rate. Achieving an 80% completion rate as Yen Xiaoqian had was already impressive, yet Silent Wonder had gone a step further and cast her spell with more than a 90% completion rate. Cold Memory knew this because the Tier 2 spell, Flame Spear, only generated a fire pillar on impact if the caster achieved a 90% completion rate or better. Not even Silk Moon, a domain realm expert, could accomplish the feat. However, of everyone in the venue, Silent Wonder was the most shocked to see this outcome. So, this is the power of a fragmented legendary weapon? Silent Wonder's heart pounded as she glanced at the brilliant silver in her hand. Shi Feng had secretly passed her the weapon before she had walked onto the battlefield. She had nearly stumbled when she had seen the staff. A fragmented legendary weapon. The various superpowers constantly searched for such a weapon, and not even the Azure Chamber of Commerce had found one, yet Zero Wing had. She had seen many powerful epic weapons, but they weren't even in the same dimension as Brilliant Silver. Setting aside the staff's attributes, Brilliant Silver's passive skills made it far stronger than an epic weapon. Thanks to Soul Transition, she now possessed a Tier 3 soul, and as a result her spells were much easier to cast. With the bonus to her mana body as well, she had more control over mana than ever before. Before the spectators could recover from their daze, the Dark Moon Beat charged at Silent Wonder again, giving the Elementalist no time to prepare. The Grand Lord was clearly furious, and when it was only 30 yards from Silent Wonder, it jumped into the air and launched a mana-filled swipe at the young woman. A translucent paw of mana formed in the air, and many of the watching experts despaired. Not only was this paw incredibly fast, but it also covered a 20-yard radius. Dodging the attack would be utterly impossible. As the paw manifested, it contained enough power to rip apart space itself. If they were to receive such an attack, they'd be left without a body to bury. However, before the mana paw could land, Silent Wonder waved her staff and cast Enchanted Ice Wall, and a crystalline wall appeared before her immediately. Boom! The battlefield trembled for a moment after the Dark Moon Bear's attack struck the ice wall, shaking the venue with the sound of a massive explosion. Impossible. How high are her attributes? Is she a monster? Everyone was flabbergasted as they stared at the ice wall, which only bore a few minor cracks. When Silent Wonder had stopped the Dark Moon Bear's first charge, they had been able to chalk it up to her luck, assuming she had simply struck a weak spot. However, they had no excuses for her performance in stopping the Dark Moon Bear's mana paw attack with her enchanted ice wall. And yet, they still couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was absurd to think a level 99 Tier 2 Elementalist could have the basic attributes to rival a level 100 Grand Lord. Nobody would believe this story. I'm impossible. How are her basic attributes so high? Yin Xiaoqian, who watched from outside the barrier, couldn't believe her eyes. Yin Xiaoqian's equipment definitely ranked among the very best in God's domain right now. Even the various superpowers domain realm monsters would likely be no match for her in this regard. However, she could only fight a level 100 High Lord at best, yet Silent Wonder stood her ground against a level 100 Grand Lord, 2 ranks higher than a High Lord. How could she possibly believe this was true? Even Cold Memory and South Dream were dumbfounded. Just what kind of guild is Zero Wing to enable a level 99 player to stand against a level 100 Grand Lord? Cold Memory and South Dream could not help but turn to look at Shi Feng. They had never imagined that Zero Wing would have such a sturdy foundation. For a time they were overwhelmed with curiosity about the guild. Zero Wing was merely a pseudo-superpower. It had already been amazing that Zero Wing's ability to nurture lifestyle players rivaled Dark Pursuit. Now, it proved that it could procure better weapons and equipment than what Dark Pursuit could get their hands on. It was utterly unbelievable. Everyone already realized that Silent Wonder would win this competition. If Silent Wonder could block the Dark Moon Bear's attacks, surviving for 10 minutes would not be difficult. In other words, she would earn the 20 sets of materials, whereas Silk Moon and Yin Xiaoqian would only have 6 sets each. Zero Wing, is it? Meanwhile, Duan Hans Han and Long Xianglong could not help but glance Shi Feng's way. First, the man had received a friendly greeting from White Autumn, and now Silent Wonder put on an outstanding display. Regardless of their personal feelings, Duan Hans Han and Long Xianglong had to take Shi Feng seriously. Rather than focus on Zero Wing, the various superpowers were curious about Silent Wonder's equipment. Her equipment is definitely extraordinary if she can block a level 100 Grand Lord's attack at level 99. One wonder what kind of equipment she is wearing? The magic runes on her robes seem to match. I suspect she's wearing set equipment, but which set? If I could get my hands on a set like that, neither my Tier 3 promotion quest nor defeating field bosses would be a problem. For a time, the various superpowers experts watched Silent Wonder in envy. If they had such incredible set equipment, they could roam level 100 neutral maps without fear. Guild Leader Black Flame, may I know what set equipment Miss Wonder is using? White Autumn curiously asked. It has gathered so much of the ambient mana. Naturally, he shared the same thoughts as the various superpowers. Such a set equipment would make killing field bosses and level 100 neutral maps so much easier. The set might even help him during his Tier 3 promotion quest. The Crimson Sunset, a Tier 2 advanced mana set equipment, Shifeng answered honestly. A Tier 2 advanced mana set equipment? White Autumn's breathing became excited. He had never realized that Zero Wing was this powerful. He had heard of mana set equipment before. It was top-tier set equipment that was even more powerful than Dark Gold set equipment, but mana set equipment was painfully rare in God's domain. Moreover, the higher the mana set equipment's tier was, the rarer it would be. As far as he knew, none of the various superpowers had a single complete Tier 2 mana set equipment, yet Zero Wing had a complete advanced mana set equipment. If he could equip Giant's Heart's Peak experts with the Crimson Sunset, they'd have a better chance of completing their Tier 3 promotion quests as well. Vice Guild Leader White, are you interested in this Crimson Sunset? Shifeng asked. You jest, Guild Leader Black Flame. I doubt any player would turn away something like this, White Autumn said, a hint of envy and desire flashing in his eyes as he gazed at the Crimson Sunset Silent Wonder War. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. If you want one, Zero Wing has a few, Shifeng calmly stated. Zero Wing certainly needed the Crimson Sunsets, but it needed money more. Since a wealthy guild like Giant's Heart was willing to work with Zero Wing, Shifeng wouldn't mind selling the guild a few of the sets. Really? White Autumn was instantly excited about the prospect. How many sets can you sell? He had already witnessed the Crimson Sunset's effects. If he could get 2 or 3 sets for Giant's Heart, the guild's main force wouldn't have to worry about grinding in level 100 neutral maps, and he could challenge his Tier 3 promotion quest immediately. Zero Wing doesn't have many sets. Will 30 be enough? Shifeng asked after giving the matter some thought. Chapter 2366, Unexpected Harvest, 30 sets. White Autumn stared at Shifeng with wide eyes, utterly baffled. He would have already been impressed if Zero Wing could afford to part with 2 or 3 sets. After all, they were talking about advanced mana set equipment, which was far rarer and more valuable than level 95 Dark Gold set equipment. Yet, Shifeng had just offered to sell him 30 Crimson Sunsets? That's right, 30 sets, Shifeng said, chuckling at White Autumn's dazed expression. Each Crimson Sunset will cost 15,000 gold and 10,000 magic crystals. What do you think, Vice Guild Leader White? Although the Crimson Sunset was extremely valuable, each set could, at most, fetch him around 30,000 to 40,000 gold. He wouldn't make any profit if he only sold a handful of sets, but selling 30 at once would be a huge windfall for Zero Wing. Of course, he could auction off the Crimson Sunsets. He'd definitely earn more money from each set if he did, but he didn't want too many powers to get their hands on the equipment, helping their experts complete their Tier 3 promotion quests much sooner. Ultimately, that wouldn't benefit Zero Wing. So, a total of 450,000 gold and 300,000 magic crystals? White Autumn realized what Shifeng implied. Can I buy 100 sets then? Even a fool could tell that Zero Wing had the ability to produce the Crimson Sunset. When White Autumn thought about the Crimson Sunset's potential mass production, he shuddered. Even if mass production wasn't possible, just being able to craft the sets was frightening. The fact that Zero Wing didn't want to share the Crimson Sunset with the various powers made this an excellent opportunity for him and Giant's Heart. If he could secure 100 Crimson Sunsets for Giant's Heart, not only could he satisfy his guild's experts who intended to challenge their Tier 3 promotion quests, but he could also arm the guild for exploring level 100 neutral maps. 100 sets? Shifeng rolled his eyes. Secretly, however, Giant's Heart's wealth shocked him. He said, producing the Crimson Sunsets is incredibly difficult and requires precious materials. At most, I can sell up to 50 sets, but the price will be different for that many. A handful of Crimson Sunsets wouldn't be overly helpful to a guild, but dozens of sets would be a different story. This was especially true as players began to reach level 100. The benefits of several dozen Crimson Sunsets were unimaginable. May I know how much you intend to charge? White Autumn asked, smiling. The price change didn't surprise him in the least. If you want 50 sets, it'll cost you a total of 900,000 gold and 600,000 magic crystals, Shifeng said after giving the matter some thought. If he had 900,000 gold, he would have enough capital to develop his territory in the Cold Spring Canyon. Meanwhile, with the 600,000 magic crystals, he could forge a new batch of crimson sunsets. Alright, deal, White Autumn answered without hesitation. It might be a significant price increase, but 50 crimson sunsets would give Giant's Heart a massive edge over the other superpowers when it came to nurturing Tier 3 players and exploring level 100 neutral maps. White Autumn was confident these crimson sunsets would also help the guild compete with Pride Empire on land. White Autumn and Shifeng then signed an agreement. Even for a superpower, 900,000 gold and 600,000 magic crystals was a huge sum, and it would take White Autumn some time to collect the payment. Shifeng was quite satisfied. He hadn't expected his trip to the Dark Hills to net him so much gold and magic crystals. After this competition, he could turn his focus to the Cold Spring Canyon's development. Once he solidified his hold on the Cold Spring Canyon, Zero Wing wouldn't have to worry about contending with the various otherworld's invading powers. The guild's development speed might even reach new highs thanks to the canyon's resources. While Shifeng and White Autumn had been negotiating, Silent Wonder won the competition. Since the moment she had stepped onto the battlefield with the Dark Moon Bear, the competition's outcome had been decided. Yan Xiaoqian was a talented alchemist, but she had only earned 6 sets of materials to work with. In the end, she had only produced 3 bottles of meditation soul. Silent Wonder, on the other hand, had produced 6 bottles before she had even used all 20 material sets. Even though Silent Wonder had won by a landslide, the other members of the Azure Chamber of Commerce couldn't believe the outcome. Big Sis Jade, this is our chance. Now that Silent Wonder has won, the Long family has secured its rule over Azure. Naturally, Zero Wing will benefit from this, the blue-clad assassin beside Jade Bamboo said. Although we can't become members of Azure, we can ally with Zero Wing and use Azure's channels through the guild. With how intense the competition in God's domain is becoming, I doubt Zero Wing would turn us away. The Azure Chamber of Commerce had access to both of the main continents and had even more resources on hand than some super guilds. The Eastern continent's various superpowers were particularly eager to obtain resources from the Eastern continent. Meanwhile, the otherworld's various powers were rapidly expanding on the main continent. If Zero Wing collaborated with their Adventurer Alliance, the alliance could provide additional security for the guild. It was a benefit that many first-rate guilds and pseudo-superpowers needed but failed to acquire. Alright. After the competition, I'll report the outcome to the Alliance Master, Jade Bamboo said, nodding. Meanwhile, Yan Xiaoqian stood on the competition grounds, still dazed. She had never dreamed that she would lose so miserably. I admit that I lost this time, Wonder, but you better not get complacent. Dark Pursuit's foundations are far more powerful than you can imagine. I will not lose the next competition between our families, Yan Xiaoqian declared, glaring at Silent Wonder. She then turned and left. The competition for the rights to rule Azure had ended, but the shareholding families held this competition each year to determine the strength and potential of the younger generation. After all, the children held the future in their hands. Yan Xiaoqian intended to use the next competition to recover from today's humiliation. Silent Wonder simply shook her head. She hadn't thought that Yan Xiaoqian would view her as a rival. Wonder, the competition is over. From now on, our Long family will be responsible for leading Azure in God's domain, Long Xianglong said as he approached Silent Wonder. Everyone has witnessed your talents. Return to the Western continent with me. You'll only be able to grow by training at the Chamber's main headquarters. The Eastern continent's legacies can't compare to those on the Western continent, and strength is everything in God's domain. You don't have to worry about Zero Wing. I'll give Zero Wing a large-scale shop in Demonstone Town. Not only will the guild be able to earn a significant amount of resources through the shop, but it will also have access to plenty of treasure from the Western continent. Silent Wonder's display had certainly shocked Long Xianglong. He hadn't realized that his niece was so powerful. She was just as talented in combat as Yan Xiaoqian. Although he had also been surprised to learn that Silk Moon had reached the domain realm, her health remained a problem. Unfortunately, Burning Owl couldn't lead the Long family to glory in the future alone. Hence, Silent Wonder's participation was absolutely necessary. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. You third uncle. I already told you. I've decided to stay in Zero Wing. Silent Wonder insisted. Enough nonsense. With your talents, it won't be long before you become one of the Chamber's vice guild leaders. You'll have no issues becoming a Grand Elder in the future either. You'll have a much better future with the Chamber than in a pseudo-superpower like Zero Wing, Long Xianglong argued. At this rate, you'll only ruin your prospects. As Silent Wonder tried to explain herself, everyone in the hall heard a deep voice. Elder Long, Silent Wonder is a genius, but I disagree that she'll ruin her future by staying in Zero Wing. Silence descended on the venue. No one had expected someone to be daring enough to refute Long Xianglong's statement, and everyone spun toward the speaker. The player that had interrupted the conversation between the Long family members was none other than Shi Feng, who slowly approached Long Xianglong. Chapter 2367, Sword King? How dare he? Everyone in the venue looked at Shi Feng as if he were a fool. Long Xianglong was the strongest member of the Long family's second generation. He was even capable of contending with Hermit, and now that the Long family had secured the right to rule Azure, his status in the chamber was even higher than Hermit's and Duan Hanshan's. The various superpowers would do anything they could to befriend Long Xianglong at this point, and yet Shi Feng had done the exact opposite, destroying any goodwill he had earned from helping Silent Wonder achieve victory. There's definitely something mentally wrong with that guy, Big Sis Jade. After that outburst, Zero Wing had likely lost any access to Azure's resources. The blue-clad assassin beside Jade Bamboo said, frowning. Long Xianglong was the second most influential person from the Long family's second generation. He had the authority to decide much regarding the family's and Azure's future. Even if he decided against attacking Zero Wing after Shi Feng's offense, it was almost certain that the guild wouldn't get anything from the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Everything Zero Wing had invested in this competition was for naught. What is he thinking? Jade Bamboo felt as if she were going mad as she watched Shi Feng. Does he think that helping Silent Wonder win this competition is enough to stand on equal footing with Long Xianglong? Earlier, Duan Hanshan hadn't called Long Xianglong lunatic Long, because the man was a fighting maniac, but because of the way he conducted himself. Once Long Xianglong decided to do something, no one could dissuade him. He would try to achieve his goal at all costs. It was easy to imagine what outcome awaited Shi Feng for offending the man. Shi Feng had already secured Azure's bountiful resources for his guild, yet he had thrown that away just as quickly. Not even a fool would be so wasteful, yet Shi Feng had done so without any hesitation. Jade Bamboo had just finished her report to her alliance master and proposed a partnership with Zero Wing too. I knew this kid wouldn't play by the rules. This is going to be interesting, Duan Hanshan said, grinning. Duan Hanshan was known for how protective he was of his faction's members in the Azure Chamber of Commerce, but he also knew how to view the bigger picture and prioritize. Long Xianglong, however, didn't. The man only prioritized his own goals, which was why Duan Hanshan didn't want to quarrel with him. While whispered discussions filled the venue, Long Xianglong turned toward Shi Feng. What? Do you think I'm wrong? Long Xianglong asked in a warning tone. With those words, everyone felt a chill crawl down their spines. Long Xianglong hadn't said much, but they could all hear his rage. They had no doubt that the man would attack anyone who dared to speak up. And yet, when Burning Owl heard the warning, he wiped the sweat from his brow and sighed in relief. Thank goodness Third Uncle didn't just attack, but Black Flame should know how to back off. Burning Owl was very familiar with his third uncle's general attitude. It always gave him huge headaches when he had to deal with the man. He had thought his third uncle would have attacked Shi Feng without a second thought. Fortunately, Long Xianglong had held back out of respect for Silent Wonder. Even an ordinary expert would realize what the man was thinking as they faced his third uncle's frightening killing intent. As long as Shi Feng had half a brain, he should know how to respond. However, Shi Feng's reply dumbfounded Burning Owl and the various superpowers upper echelons. That's right. That assumption is incorrect, Shi Feng immediately replied. Wonder might be able to develop well in Azure, but her development in Zero Wing would be just as successful. Silent Wonder's talent went without saying. Not only had she been one of the 10 great Grandmaster Alchemists in the past, but she had also been a Tier 5 powerhouse. Even the various superpowers had been helpless against her without dispatching a Tier 6 God-ranked expert. Although the Azure Chamber of Commerce had a foundation that rivaled super guilds, Zero Wing was just as capable of nurturing experts. After all, Zero Wing had the extraordinary tower. None of the various superpowers had this advantage, and the realms of truth were far more beneficial to magical class players like Silent Wonder than the realms of refinement. If Silent Wonder could master the realms of truth, she would gain strength far beyond that of reaching the domain realm. This was the very reason that Violet Cloud commanded more combat power than Fire Dance and Gentle Snow, despite having the same combat standards. Of course, as soon as Shi Feng finished his statement, silence returned to the venue. Is his brain broken? Burning Owl nearly cursed aloud when he heard Shifeng argue. Not once but twice. Shifeng had provoked his third uncle twice. It's no wonder why this kid dared to provoke me earlier. It seems he had no fear of death. Duan Hanshan was stunned by Shifeng's response. Even he was afraid of provoking Long Xianglong. The only people that could keep the man in check were the Long family's old man and Azure's guild leader. Long Xianglong didn't respect anyone else and typically did as he wished. While the various superpowers upper echelons watched, their envy of Zero Wing vanished instantly. Now they merely laughed and ridiculed Shifeng's ignorance. Even Silk Moon, who had watched this play out in silence, gave Shifeng a strange look. You're quite interesting, young man. I don't know how many years it's been since someone has spoken to me like that, Long Xianglong said, flashing Shifeng a wrathful grin. You must be confident in Zero Wing's strength since you think it can help Wonder's development as much as Azure, right? In that case, why don't you show me this strength? Third uncle. Silent Wonder rushed forward to dissuade Long Xianglong. Do not interfere, Wonder. I want to see the standards of the guild you so favor, Long Xianglong said as he raised his hand to stop Silent Wonder. He returned his attention to Shifeng and said, My requirements of your guild aren't high. Since you're the guild leader, you should have satisfactory combat standards. If you can survive 10 moves against me, I'll stand aside. However, if you fail, Wonder will have to leave Zero Wing. Of course, Zero Wing will still gain access to the resources it deserves. What do you think? As far as Long Xianglong was concerned, Shifeng was an ignorant fool that had grown arrogant because he had obtained some good equipment for Silent Wonder, and Silent Wonder still viewed God's Domain as the same kind of virtual reality game of the past. She simply didn't realize the advantages the Azure Chamber of Commerce had in God's Domain. What? Are you afraid? Long Xianglong taunted, interpreting Shifeng's silence as fear. As Shifeng was about to speak, White Autumn suddenly stepped forward. Is this necessary, Brother Long? Can we not allow the younger generation to make their own decisions? White Autumn asked. Everyone was surprised by White Autumn's intervention. What relationship does White Autumn have with Zero Wing? I can't believe he's actually willing to stand up for the guild in a situation like this, Jade Bamboo muttered as she curiously glanced at Shifeng. Now that the Long family ruled Azure, the various superpowers would fight for its favor. They'd do anything in their power to support Long Xianglong, and yet White Autumn chose to support Zero Wing. This was simply unbelievable. Please do not try to stop this, Vice Guild Leader White. This is between us, Long Xianglong said. Although he was just as surprised, he rejected White Autumn's advice. Brother Long, you misunderstand. I'm not trying to stand against you. I'm only doing this for your own good, White Autumn said, shaking his head as he smiled. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. What are you trying to say? Long Xianglong coldly demanded. I mean that you're no match for Guild Leader Black Flame, White Autumn explained with a sigh. I'm not a match for him? Long Xianglong laughed. And why not? Do you think that Azure is no match for Zero Wing just because it has powerful weapons and equipment, that Azure cannot secure its own? Long Xianglong knew that Zero Wing had powerful foundations. He could easily evaluate Silent Wonder's equipment. As Zero Wing's guild leader, Shifeng's weapons and equipment should be just as good if not better than Silent Wonder's, but that didn't mean that the Azure Chamber of Commerce was inferior in this regard. It is because he is a Tier 3 Sword King. Chapter 2368, Venue shocked. White Autumn hadn't been loud, but everyone in the venue had heard him clearly. They immediately turned toward Shifeng in astonishment. He's reached Tier 3? Impossible. Instinctively they refused to believe White Autumn's claim, especially the furious Long Xianglong. He assumed White Autumn was trying to trick him. Is White Autumn joking? How can that kid be Tier 3? Not even Duan Hanshan believed White Autumn's statement had been serious. Apex experts like Duan Hanshan had been fighting to reach Tier 3 for a while, yet even now he wasn't confident of completing his promotion quest and intended to train for a while longer. Meanwhile, Shifeng was merely the guild leader from a pseudo-superpower. He had nowhere near as much access to resources as Azure's Grand Elders. It'd already be impressive if the young man had reached level 100, not to mention Tier 3. However, Hermit suddenly stepped forward and confirmed, he is indeed a Tier 3 Sword King. Shocked silence filled the venue again after Hermit supported White Autumn's statement. Not only had White Autumn claimed that Shifeng was a Tier 3 player, but now Hermit, one of Azure's Grand Elders, agreed. Either these two men were playing a joke or they were telling the truth. However, Hermit should have no reason to lie with his status and position. Everyone turned to stare at Shi Feng, their expressions changing. Rather than seeing a simple pseudo-superpowers guild leader, they saw Shi Feng as a Tier 3 powerhouse that could effortlessly slaughter Tier 2 players. It's no wonder why Hermit turned a blind eye to his earlier transgression. So he's a Tier 3 Sword King? Realization dawned on Burning Owl. Hermit was famous for his strict nature in the Azure Chamber of Commerce. He wouldn't tolerate an outsider killing one of Azure's peak experts, yet he had done precisely that at the Dark Hills checkpoint. He had even admonished the surviving peak experts that guarded the checkpoint. Hermit wasn't trying to interfere with the two main families' affairs. He just wanted to prevent any friction between Azure and Shi Feng. Tier 3? He's certainly hidden his strength, Jade Bamboo muttered. Now she watched Shi Feng with a more serious gaze. She hadn't thought that Zero Wing had such an incredible foundation. The Tier 3 promotion quest was an exceptionally difficult trial. Based on what she knew, none of God's domain's superpowers had successfully nurtured a Tier 3 player yet. If Shi Feng were truly a Tier 3 player, her Adventurer Alliance would need to re-evaluate the potential partnership with Zero Wing. Meanwhile, Long Xianglong's complexion shifted between red and white. He was silent for a long moment, but eventually he gritted his teeth and glared at Shi Feng. Excellent. You actually tried to trick me. Even he would have to flee from a Tier 3 player. The difference between the tiers' power was simply too massive to overcome, which was how Tier 2 players so easily trampled over Tier 1 players. Meanwhile, Duan Han was relieved that he hadn't attacked the man earlier. Otherwise he would have been in this awkward position rather than Long Xianglong. Elder Long, do you still desire a match? Shi Feng asked, smiling faintly. Shi Feng could understand Long Xianglong's desire to drag Silent Wonder to the Azure Chamber of Commerce, but he couldn't ignore the man's insult that Zero Wing would destroy her future. If Long Xianglong wanted a match, Shi Feng didn't mind showing off Zero Wing's foundations. No need. I admit that I am no match for you right now, Long Xianglong decided. However, the difference between our individual strengths doesn't prove anything. Nurturing experts require a massive amount of resources. Is Zero Wing better equipped than Azure to handle that requirement? How would we know if we don't try? Shi Feng nonchalantly replied. Azure had a lot of resources, but Zero Wing wasn't as unprepared to nurture experts as it had been in the past. This was especially true now that Zero Wing had accumulated a huge stockpile of primal void stones. Once the guild constructed a combat room with those stones, it would be just as capable of nurturing experts as current superpowers. Furthermore, Shi Feng had a better understanding of what awaited players after Tier 3 than anyone. Good. Very good. Azure holds this competition between the shareholder family's younger generation every year. Naturally, Wonder will participate in next year's competition as well. Show me how far she'll develop with Zero Wing without Azure's resources. Long Xianglong snarled before he turned and left. Third uncle. Silent Wonder felt anxious as she watched Long Xianglong storm off. Zero Wing had expended a lot of resources to help her improve. She had hoped to return the favor with resources from Azure once she had won the competition, but Long Xianglong's attitude made it clear that he had no intention of giving her guild a single cent. Don't bother, second sis. You know how third uncle is. We'll have to wait until he calms down to persuade him, Burning Owl advised, trying to ease Silent Wonder's nerves. She had no choice but to give up, despite how guilty she felt. Meanwhile, the various spectating powers joyfully grinned at Shi Feng, especially Duan Han. Despite helping the Long family a great deal, Zero Wing would walk away with nothing. Why wouldn't Duan Han be pleased? Black Flame is very strong, but he's foolish. He threw away such a golden opportunity. Yen Xiaoqian looked at the man a little disappointed. It seems Silent Wonder won't be a match for me in the next competition. Black Flame really is stubborn. If he hadn't provoked Long Xianglong, he would have secured precious resources from the Western continent. Not only would Zero Wing have grown stronger, but it would have had an easier time fending off the otherworld's invading powers. But he's lost everything. What can he possibly do by himself? The blue-clad assassin beside Jade Bamboo surmised, just as stunned by Shi Feng's performance as the rest of the crowd. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Shi Feng might be very strong and deserve respect for reaching Tier 3 so soon, but he'd only have that advantage for a short time. His status as a Tier 3 player would be meaningless once the various superpowers experts were the same tier. How exactly did Zero Wing intend to compete with the Azure Chamber of Commerce then? Jade Bamboo nodded in agreement. She had planned to convince her alliance master to negotiate a partnership with Zero Wing, but it seemed that it was no longer necessary. Similarly, the other superpowers that intended to approach Zero Wing about an alliance dismissed the idea. Shi Feng didn't remain in Demonstone Town after Azure's competition reached its end. He and Silent Wonder immediately teleported back to White River City. Since the very beginning, he had never viewed Demonstone Town's resources as important. He had only one thing on his mind: his territory in the Cold Spring Canyon. Once he developed the area, the resources Azure could offer would pale in comparison. Chapter 2369, Candlelight's New Benefits. 2 lights flashed in White River City's teleportation hall as Shi Feng and Silent Wonder returned. Although they had only been away from the city for about half a day, it had changed significantly. There were visibly more players in the teleportation hall than when they had left, and many of these players originated from the various other worlds. Their life auras were clearly different from the main continent's ordinary players. Many of Starmoon Kingdom's original inhabitants couldn't help but envy these otherworld players when they saw them. Being a silver member in the Starmoon Adventurer Alliance is wonderful. The alliance actually lets them tag along with so many experts when questing and leveling up. A level 92 shield warrior in full level 90 mysterious iron equipment said as he watched a team walk toward the teleportation array. I wonder when I'll get promoted to silver rank. When I do, my friends and guilds will die from envy. Silver members might get excellent benefits, but becoming one of the alliance's elites is easier said than done, one of the shield warrior's teammates, a level 93 assassin, said. Major powers from several other worlds founded the Star Moon Adventurer Alliance recently, and they've made huge investments in the alliance. As a result, they've substantially raised the requirements to reach silver rank. You only used to need to reach the Trial Tower's 5th floor to become a silver member, but now you need to reach the early stage of the Trial Tower's 6th floor. That's old news. I've heard they've recently raised the bar to the 6th floor's middle stage, and you need to make significant contributions to the alliance. Isn't that a little too much? The level 92 shield warrior exclaimed. Even in our adventurer team, only a handful of people can meet that requirement. I know, right? The level 93 assassin said, sighing. As players' average combat standards rose, the requirements to be considered an expert increased as well, but even at this stage of the game, the various major powers considered a player an ordinary expert if they could reach the late stage of the Trial Tower's 5th floor. The Starmoon Adventurer Alliance, however, required its silver members to reach the 6th floor's middle stage, much to the despair of many of the alliance's ordinary experts. These otherworld powers are moving so quickly? Shi Feng was surprised when he overheard the conversation. The various otherworld powers had only established adventurer alliances to recruit independent players after encountering resistance on the main continent during his previous life. Since individually these powers' abilities and resources were limited, they usually worked together to run an adventurer alliance. And yet, these otherworld powers had begun to work together much sooner than they had in the past. Naturally, this would have a greater impact on the main continent's various powers. After all, independent players made up the majority of God's Domain's player base. With this thought in mind, Shi Feng hurried toward the Candlelight trading firm. The Otherworld Powers partnership would even have a massive impact on Super Guild's development, not to mention Zero Wing. If Zero Wing wanted to survive this invasion, not only would it have to grow its members' overall strength, but it would also have to recruit far more capable players. While they walked, Shi Feng instructed Silent Wonder to level up so she could complete her Tier 3 promotion quest sooner than later. Her combat standards weren't low, and she was just a step away from the Void Realm. She shouldn't have any issues completing her promotion quest as soon as she reached level 100 with the help of the enhanced Crimson Sunset. She'd likely have an even easier time completing it than Cola and the others. The first thing Shi Feng did upon returning to the Candlelight trading firm was to contact Melancholic Smile and have her prioritize the Crimson Dragon flying ship's production and material collection. He also told her to recruit more lifestyle players with high potential. After players reached level 100, lifestyle players would become a guild's main source of weapons, equipment, tools, and potions. The power that commanded the most lifestyle players would gain control over weapon and equipment supply after level 100. Fortunately, the various major powers would only figure this out once they began to explore level 100 neutral maps. Guild Leader, the various otherworld powers have been rapidly expanding their lifestyle player recruitments lately. Moreover, they are offering considerably high salaries. It won't be easy to compete with the Adventurer Alliance in this regard since it is an independent organization, Melancholic Smile said, smiling bitterly. To make matters worse, the kingdom's independent players have gone crazy since the Star Moon Adventurer Alliance has published its membership policy. Some lifestyle players have even begun to withdraw from their large guilds to join the alliance. Although Candlelight had a massive competitive edge thanks to its 4-star shop in White River City, that edge was only effective against the various large guilds. Independent organizations like the Star Moon Adventurer Alliance were a different story. As long as the alliance offered some benefits, both lifestyle players and combat players would be more than willing to join. The alliance's rules weren't particularly strict after all. I understand. Shifeng nodded. But no matter what, we need to accelerate the trading firm's development. From now on, I intend to give normal members access to the meditation rooms as well, but they'll have to pay 10,000 GCPs per hour. We'll also open the research workshop to all internal members for 50,000 GCPs per half hour. Core members will receive a 20% discount for the research workshop. These conditions should be enough to lure in quite a few capable lifestyle players, Melancholic Smile said, her eyes glowing with excitement. The basic meditation room was extremely helpful to lifestyle players, especially those who hadn't yet reached the master rank. The room's environment was miraculously effective when players practiced production methods. In addition, the meditation room could help players when they created basic master designs or recipes. Access to the rooms was a very attractive benefit to lifestyle players. Candlelight's normal members hadn't had any access to the basic meditation rooms thus far since there were too few available, but now that Candlelight had a 4-star shop and 5 3-star shops, the number of rooms available had skyrocketed. Renting some of the basic meditation rooms to the trading firm's normal members wouldn't affect the internal members' development in the least. Moreover, Candlelight wasn't strict with its normal members. Normal members were only required to produce a certain number of items every day. If lifestyle players learned that they could rent basic meditation rooms as a normal member in Candlelight, they'd lose their minds. Only 3-star shops and greater had basic meditation rooms, and at this stage of the game very few powers had 3-star shops, most of which were superpowers. Generally, these superpowers reserved the basic meditation rooms for their master lifestyle players. Normal members had no hope of using them. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. However, Candlelight's players, regardless of lifestyle rank, would be able to rent a basic meditation room in the Candlelight trading firm. Furthermore, based on the value of Candlelight's GCPs, 10,000 GCPs were only equal to 30 gold. Renting a basic meditation room for 30 gold an hour was a bargain that lifestyle players wouldn't find anywhere else in God's domain. The various adventurer alliances might be able to offer more resources and freedom, but these factors wouldn't be nearly as helpful to a lifestyle player's development as a basic meditation room. Shifeng left Melancholic Smile to oversee the adjustments and recruitment. He then resumed the Crimson Sunset's production to help the guild's core members prepare for their Tier 3 promotion quests. After half a day of work, White Autumn's Secret visited the Candlelight trading firm to fulfill his transaction with Shifeng. In exchange for 50 Crimson Sunsets, Shifeng instantly obtained 900,000 gold and 600,000 magic crystals. I finally have enough money. Time to visit the Adventurers Association. Shifeng brimmed with confidence as he gazed at the astronomical sum of coins in his bag. He left the Candlelight trading firm immediately, heading toward the Adventurers Association. Chapter 2370 Night Division takes shape. White River City, Adventurers Association. Due to the new Starmoon Adventurer Alliance in Starmoon Kingdom, White River City's Adventurers Association had become extraordinarily lively. When Shifeng arrived, he spotted teams entering and leaving the building. Nearly half of these players were from other worlds. There were now many times more otherworld players than there had been several days ago. Moreover, every one of these otherworld players was impressively strong, with the lowest level among them level 98, while many had already reached level 99. These otherworld players' average level was far higher than the local players. There are so many people here. Has it started already? Shifeng was a little surprised as he watched the teams flow in and out of the association. The otherworld powers weren't the main continent's various powers' true opponent. Rather, it was the otherworld's general populace. When the planar passages had first opened, only the otherworld's asterisk major powers had been able to cross to the main continent since they had monopolized their respective passages. However, as the passages activated fully, not even those major powers could control them completely, and as a result, players surged toward the main continent. Competition on the main continent had already been intense, and now, as powerful otherworld players joined the fray, it was easy to imagine the impact they had on the main continent's various powers. Players would especially fight over the resources in the various NPC cities. Take the Adventurers Association, for example. There were only so many high-ranked quests available, and with an increase in player population, it was natural that players would have fewer quests to complete. If resources became less available, the various large guilds' development would slow significantly. The guilds that hadn't bothered to focus on neutral maps in particular would suffer. This lack of resources would be fatal to them. This was why even superpowers had fallen prey to the otherworld powers in Shifeng's previous life. Even if the main continent's ordinary powers hadn't been directly affected by the invasion, the aftereffects had been more than enough to stagnate their development. Currently, Zero Wing had a wide sphere of development. The guild even had territory in neutral maps. Zero Wing shouldn't have any issues enduring the initial otherworld invasion. However, the guild still needed to be very careful with its operations. Otherwise, Zero Wing would suffer a severe developmental blow since multiple hostile superpowers were keeping an eye on it. Thinking up to this point, Shifeng entered the Adventurers Association. Administrator Lorraine, I wish to check the status of the night draft. Shifeng addressed the elven beauty that entered the VIP reception room he occupied. The 5,000 knights were crucial to his management of the Cold Spring Canyon. Although he had spent a lot of money to draft these knights, he hadn't bothered to visit the Adventurers Association since he hadn't had enough money. Finding willing and powerful NPCs wouldn't matter if he couldn't afford to hire them. Hiring NPCs for a knight division wasn't like hiring NPCs as soldiers to protect a guild town. He would not receive any subsidies from the kingdom. It was like nurturing 5,000 personal guards. Without sufficient capital, he couldn't support the knight division. Now, however, he had 900,000 gold on him, which should be, more or less, enough to establish his knight division. This is the current status of your draft, Lorraine said, smiling as she handed Shifeng a thick stack of papers. He was dumbfounded when he saw the listed numbers on the summary sheet. Aren't these results a little too amazing? Shifeng couldn't believe his eyes. His draft had attracted 20,164 NPCs in total. Among them, 13,664 were Tier 2 Common Knights, 4,814 were Tier 2 Bronze Knights, 1,669 were Tier 2 Mysterious Iron Knights, 15 were Tier 2 Secret Silver Knights, and 2 were Tier 2 Fine Gold Knights. Shifeng had assumed he'd be fortunate to gain the interest of 5,000 NPCs with his draft. Recruiting NPCs wasn't easy after all. Players that weren't one-star lords would have to spend 2 or 3 months to find enough interested NPCs. And yet, he had over 20,000 NPCs apply for the draft, and they were frighteningly high quality. Based on what Shifeng knew, most of the NPCs in a superpowers knight division would be Bronze Knights, with very few Mysterious Iron Knights. Mysterious Iron Knights were just as rare as Mysterious Iron Personal Guards. Only the knight divisions that had been in place for a while had attracted Secret Silver Knights in the past, and one would have to be very lucky to find treasured Fine Gold Knights. Shifeng had never imagined that his simple draft would lure 15 Secret Silver and 2 Fine Gold Knights. If the various superpowers of the past knew about this, they'd go mad with envy. As for Tier 3 NPCs, recruiting such a being was painfully difficult in God's domain because they were considered powerhouses in the game. They qualified to rule over a small city. Naturally, they wouldn't be willing to lower themselves to becoming someone's knight. However, when Shifeng saw the prices to recruit these NPCs, his excitement vanished. The Bronze Knights only requested a weekly salary of 30 gold, with a 20 gold per week nurturing fee, but the knights of higher ranks cost far more. Mysterious Iron Knights requested a weekly salary of 70 gold and a 30 gold per week nurturing fee. Secret Silver Knights requested a weekly salary of 150 gold and 50 gold per week nurturing fee, and Fine Gold Knights requested a weekly salary of 300 gold and 100 gold per week nurturing fee. If Shifeng hired the best available knights, maintaining his knight division would cost him 336,400 gold per week. Even superpowers would choke at this amount, and that didn't even include the cost of arming these knights. Lord Bronze Legatee, may I know who you wish to choose? Lorraine asked after Shifeng's long silence. I want all of the Fine Gold, Secret Silver and Mysterious Iron Knights. Fill the remaining slots with Bronze Knights, Shifeng said, his heart aching as he spoke. Also, outfit the Secret Silver and Fine Gold Knights with epic equipment, and give the rest Secret Silver equipment. Fortunately, arming these knights cost as much as arming NPC soldiers. A full set of level 100 to level 150 epic equipment cost 4,000 gold, and a full set of level 100 to level 150 secret silver equipment cost 50 gold. Even so, it still cost him a total of 317,150 gold to outfit his entire knight division. Very well. Your total comes to 653,550 gold coins, Lorraine announced after calculating the total cost. Here, Shifeng said, gritting his teeth. He was reluctant, but he still paid the full amount. If he hadn't just earned 900,000 gold, he doubted he'd be able to walk out of the Adventurers Association. Shifeng finally understood why so few first-rate guilds had formed knight divisions in the past. Although it was profitable to own territory in a level 100 neutral map, the knight division was a heavy burden. If not handled carefully, a first-rate guild would easily go bankrupt. Only superpowers could afford to maintain a knight division without major repercussions. Now that you have hired your knights, please prepare their accommodations in your territory as soon as possible. If they do not have suitable accommodations, they may dissolve their contracts, Lorraine warned Shifeng after she received the payment. At the moment there wasn't even a town in Cold Spring Canyon. That won't be a problem. I wish to transfer Stone Forest City to my new territory now, Shifeng said. He then handed another 50,000 gold to the Elven administrator. Once players had a land of their own, they had the authority to transfer a guild town or city to the area. Of course, the transfer had a price which would depend on the target's size. Transferring a basic city like Stone Forest City would cost 50,000 gold, while if one transferred an advanced town, they'd only have to pay 10,000 gold. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU mainstream players had already reached level 95, while most experts were, on average, level 97. They weren't far from level 100. Once players reached level 100, they wouldn't be allowed into the bottomless abyss. Although the bottomless abyss had bountiful resources, it would become drastically less useful to players as time passed, and as a result, Stone Forest City's daily income continued to decrease. Rather than let the city rot in the bottomless abyss, Shifeng would benefit from transferring it to a level 100 neutral map as soon as possible. That won't be a problem. We'll send people to transfer your city immediately, Lorraine said as she accepted the 50,000 gold. She retrieved a map of the Cold Spring Canyon, smoothing it down on the table. Where do you wish to place the, I want to transfer it here beside Cold Spring Lake, Shifeng said as he pointed at one of the mountaintops near the lake. Very well. The transfer will be completed in 1 hour, Lorraine informed him once she had confirmed the destination. Once Shifeng had settled his affairs with the Adventurers Association, he promptly returned to the candlelight trading firm to wait. At the same time, Stone Forest Town abruptly disappeared from the bottomless abyss, leaving a bunch of confused players in an empty plot of land. Chapter 2371, Abyss Shaken. What happened? Why am I outside? Where's the city? Crap. I just got here and it just disappears? The players forced out of Stone Forest City looked around them in confusion. Stone Forest City was the most prosperous city in the bottomless abyss. Even though the various superpowers had established their own guild towns in the regional dungeon, these guild towns were nothing compared to Stone Forest City, especially when it came to training. Stone Forest City provided enough mana density that it was a holy land for training. Moreover, players could recover their exhausted stamina and concentration far faster in Stone Forest City than in the Superpowers Guild towns. Many teams that explored the bottomless abyss relied on the city as their resting point, including teams from the superpowers that had their own guild towns. This made Stone Forest City the most popular resting area in the bottomless abyss. And yet, the city had just disappeared. Even players from the Dark Knight Empire's various major powers were stunned, not to mention the independent players. None of them had expected Stone Forest City, the closest resting area to the bottomless abyss's second floor, to suddenly vanish. Has something happened to Stone Forest City? Since the city disappeared once everyone was teleported out of it, Zero Wing must have transferred the city elsewhere. Transferred Stone Forest City elsewhere? Is Zero Wing insane? Does the guild want the bottomless abyss's resources? All of the various major powers members had their guesses regarding the city's abrupt disappearance, and they all reported back to their superiors. For a time, the various powers in the bottomless abyss were in an uproar. Stone Forest City had become irreplaceable in the bottomless abyss. Almost every power that wanted to explore the regional dungeon had to use the city, or their progress would fall behind their competition. Naturally, as one of the city's shareholders, the secret pavilion immediately received the news. What is Zero Wing doing? They moved Stone Forest City without mentioning it to us? Don't they know that this is a crucial moment for conquering the bottomless abyss? Yuan Chexing's expression darkened as he read the latest report. Currently, the various superpowers were frantically trying to explore the bottomless abyss's third floor. The loot in that area was incredibly important. Not only did the third floor's monsters drop plenty of top-tier level 95+ weapons and equipment, but they also dropped a ton of magic crystals. There was even a higher chance to obtain 7 Luminaries crystals on that floor. Very few maps in God's domain could offer as abundant loot as the bottomless abyss's third floor. Moreover, since the planar passages had opened, the situation on the main continent had become painfully tense. A war of unimaginable scale could break out between powers at any time. Even the secret pavilion had to prepare. Stone Forest City's sudden disappearance from the bottomless abyss would definitely impact the secret pavilion's plans. The secret pavilion's guild leader had even called Yuan Chexing personally about the matter. "Uncle Yuan, what should we do now?" Purple Jade asked. She was also quite concerned about the situation. After training in Stone Forest City, she had improved considerably. Now she was only one step away from reaching the domain realm. "We have no choice. We have to meet with Black Flame now." The matter frustrated Yuan Chexing. The secret pavilion owned some of Stone Forest City's shares, but Zero Wing held absolute authority over the city. Zero Wing might have an obligation to inform the secret pavilion of any decisions regarding Stone Forest City, but in truth, that didn't really matter. The secret pavilion simply had no say. While Yuan Chexing and Purple Jade made their way to White River City, the various superpowers in the bottomless abyss took this opportunity to claim the prime real estate Stone Forest City had left behind. While the various powers were making a fuss over Stone Forest City's disappearance, Liang Jing was having a nervous breakdown over it. After barging into Shifeng's special forging room, Liang Jing reported, "Guild leader, Stone Forest City has disappeared." "Amicham, I know." Shifeng, who was in the midst of producing a crimson sunset, nodded. "You know?" Liang Jing was shocked into a moment of silence. "Guild leader, is this your doing?" "That's right, I did it," Shifeng said, not bothering to hide the truth. After all, he had the most authority over the city. No one could transfer a city without permission. "Guild leader. Stone Forest City is one of our guild's main sources of income. Although we're not earning as much from the house's rent, we have just as many players interested in renting them. That rent alone is enough to fund normal operations of Zero Wing's main headquarters. With Stone Forest City gone from the bottomless abyss, many players are going to demand a refund." Liang Jing exclaimed as she massaged her temples. Currently, she was in charge of most of Zero Wing's headquarters affairs, especially now that Blackie and Gentle Snow had left their daily tasks to her. What gave her the biggest headache, however, was handling the payments that required credits. To ease the management flow, Shifeng had granted her authority to manage Stone Forest City's income. After a few months, she had finally managed to balance the headquarters' expenditures and Stone Forest City's income. And yet, Shifeng had just relocated Stone Forest City elsewhere, rendering her efforts useless. "Relax. They won't ask for a refund," Shifeng said, chuckling. "If they do, we can give them a refund based on the original price. We can even refund them in coins if they want." Stone Forest City's private houses had always been leased for credits. Receiving a refund in coins would be a welcome bonus. Although it was becoming easier to earn coins, players had to bear more expenditures in God's domain. As a result, players weren't able to save a lot of coins as they reached higher levels. Hence, money farming teams and workshops were extremely popular among players that wanted to pay credits for coins in God's domain. God's domain was like a second world to players. Since coins were more useful in God's domain, players were naturally more willing to spend credits than coins. "If we do that, we'll still have to pay at least 100,000 gold in refunds," Liang Jing said, exasperated at Shifeng's nonchalant attitude. At this point, she was neither Chairman Zhao's secretary, nor was she ignorant of God's domain. On the contrary, she spent more time in the game than in the real world. She knew exactly how valuable 100,000 gold was. Even to the various superpowers, it was a significant sum. "Here's 100,000 gold, hold on to it for now," Shifeng said as he passed the gold to Liang Jing. He then continued, "Later, send me a summary of how many people wanted a refund. I intend to hold a leasing auction for the empty houses. We'll start the bidding at 30,000 credits per week. 30,000 per week? Liang Jing gaped when she heard the price. When Stone Forest had still been in the bottomless abyss, they had leased the private houses for 40,000 to 50,000 credits per month, except for the first month's auctions. Even so, most players couldn't afford the rent. Yet now, Shifeng wanted to lease the houses for 30,000 credits per week. It was utterly insane. The bottomless abyss was the best grinding spot in God's domain at the moment. Outside of the regional dungeon, the property value in Stone Forest City would plummet. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. You, take care of the necessary preparations, Shifeng said, not bothering with the task. He sent Liang Jing away to take care of Stone Forest City's new leasing plan. He had already considered the consequences of relocating Stone Forest City out of the regional dungeon. The city did provide a considerable supply of top-tier level 95+ weapons and equipment, but that wasn't what Zero Wing needed most right now. The guild needed funds and strength. Rather than trying to squeeze the bottomless abyss for everything it had, Zero Wing would benefit more from focusing on level 100 neutral maps. Exploring these areas would be particularly profitable since the various superpowers were just beginning to encounter level 100 neutral maps. It was an opportunity for Zero Wing to make a killing, and there wouldn't be another in the future. Shortly after Liang Jing left, Shifeng heard the sound of a system notification. System: Stone Forest City's transfer is complete. You may open Stone Forest City at any time. Chapter 2372, Territory Strengthened. The transfer's finally complete. Shifeng stopped working when he heard the system notification. Hurriedly, he called up Stone Forest City's system interface to inspect the city's current status. In God's domain, not only did a territory's lord have the authority to transfer a guild town or city to their land once, but their town or city would also gain a random bonus once the transfer completed. Of the potential bonuses, one was increased defensive capabilities, which would strengthen the town against monster assaults. Another potential bonus was increased size, allowing the town or city to accommodate more players. Shifeng knew it was possible for the system to increase the town or city's mana density as well. Based on what he knew of this bonus, the town or city's mana density would undergo a qualitative transformation. Naturally, this bonus was particularly valuable in level 100+ maps. These maps had harsh environments, and the mana density in the town or city would determine players' stamina and concentration recovery rates. In the past, any town or city that had received the mana density bonus had become instantly popular among players exploring level 100+ neutral maps. The powers that had owned these towns or cities had no lack of customers. After calling up Stone Forest City system interface, Shifeng browsed through the lines of data until he found what he was looking for. Stone Forest City, current location, Cold Spring Canyon. Current rank, basic city bonus acquired, magic array enhancement. Shifeng's face lit with excitement when he saw the bonus Stone Forest City had acquired. Of the many bonuses a territorial town or city could acquire, the two best were mana density enhancement and magic array enhancement. Every player desired the former, of course. However, the powers that ruled these towns or cities hoped for the latter more than any other potential bonus. Not only would the magic array enhancement fortify the city's defensive magic array, allowing it to endure stronger attacks, but it would also reinforce the magic array's spatial isolation effect. Level 100+ neutral maps environments were particularly severe, plagued with a chaotic energy that invaded players' bodies and lowered their stamina and concentration recovery rates. When players returned to a town or city, they had to rest for quite a while to recover fully. However, a town with an enhanced magic array could lessen the effects of the chaotic energy, accelerating players' recovery. This greatly increased the amount of time they could spend grinding in the fields. Magic array enhancement was just as effective as enhanced mana density. With this, I won't have to worry about the guild members' leveling speed in the Cold Spring Canyon. Shifeng felt as if he had just won the lottery. The 50,000 gold he had spent to relocate Stone Forest City could be considered the random bonuses fee. Had he been unlucky, Stone Forest City would have merely gained a popularity bonus, which was only slightly useful. However, since the city had gained the magic array enhancement bonus, even Tier 2 players could grind in the Cold Spring Canyon without any concerns. Moreover, with the leveling resources available in a level 100 neutral map, the guild members' leveling speed in the Cold Spring Canyon would likely rival their leveling speed in the bottomless abyss. In addition, they could grind for level 100 weapons and equipment much sooner than others, which would definitely increase Zero Wing's overall strength by a large margin. While Shifeng planned to send Zero Wing's core members to Stone Forest City as soon as possible, Liang Jing contacted him. Guild leader, the secret pavilion's people have arrived and wish to speak with you. By the looks it this seems urgent. Do you want to meet them now? The secret pavilion sure moves quickly, Shifeng said, chuckling. Send them to me. The secret pavilion owned some of Stone Forest City's shares, and now that the city had vanished, it wasn't unusual for the pavilion to grow nervous. Not only had Stone Forest City become a valuable source of resources for the secret pavilion, but the various superpowers had been in the midst of exploring the bottomless abyss's third floor shortly before the city disappeared. Moreover, everyone was concerned about the various otherworlds' invasion. After a short moment, Liang Jing led a middle-aged man and a young woman into Shifeng's special forging room. They were none other than Yuan Tiexin and Purple Jade. Both secret pavilion members had already reached level 100, and they both wore multiple pieces of epic equipment. Even the weakest piece between them was level 95 dark gold rank. Moreover, Purple Jade radiated an astonishing life aura. When it came to basic attributes, these two likely rivaled God's kin players. Regarding combat power, they could rival domain realm experts. Purple Jade might even be stronger than a domain realm expert. If Yuan Tiexin and Purple Jade worked together, even the various superpowers would have to be cautious. However, they showed no sign of the arrogance experts of their caliber usually possessed as they entered the room. On the contrary, they looked upon Shifeng with awe and admiration. They had already learned that Shifeng had been promoted to Tier 3, and they knew his strength transcended that of Tier 2 players. Now, he was a powerhouse that even the various superpowers would have to be careful of. I assume you two are here to ask about Stone Forest City? Shifeng said, getting straight to the point. That's right, that's exactly why we've come, Yuan Tiexin said, nodding as he gave Shifeng a confused look. We're in the final stages of exploring the bottomless abyss. The third floor is a treasure trove of top-tier, level 95 weapons and equipment. Why has Zero Wing given up on the regional dungeon and relocated Stone Forest City? You know that the situation on the main continent has become more complicated. The various otherworld powers have begun to set their sights on various areas of the continent. A large-scale war will break out in the near future. Everyone has been frantically preparing for it. Meanwhile, due to Stone Forest City's sudden disappearance, some superpowers have begun to question the secret pavilion's abilities. Our guild leader is hoping that Zero Wing has an explanation for this. Of course I do, Shifeng said, chuckling. But before I tell you, I was wondering if the secret pavilion can help me with something. Yuan Tiexin was a little exasperated with Shifeng's reply. They had come here to demand answers of the man, yet he asked them for help before he'd offer an explanation. May I know what you need help with, guild leader Black Flame? Yuan Tiexin asked after taking a deep breath. It's simple. I'd like to ask the secret pavilion to revoke Starlink's membership in the secret chamber of commerce, Shifeng calmly stated. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Starlink constantly targeted Zero Wing, particularly on an economic front. However, since a powerful corporation backed Starlink, and the guild had access to the secret chamber of commerce's connections, his guild couldn't effectively retaliate. If Zero Wing could cut off one of Starlink's income sources, the enemy guild would be much easier to deal with economically. Yuan Tiexin and Purple Jade were stunned, staring at Shifeng as if he were a fool. Setting aside Starlink's current position in the chamber, why would we do something so fruitless even if the secret pavilion had that power, guild leader Black Flame? You should know that every member is an important resource for the chamber. We cannot remove Starlink over one city, Yuan Tiexin answered seriously. As far as Yuan Tiexin was concerned, Shifeng must have lost his mind. Stone Forest City was an excellent asset, but even if it were still located in the bottomless abyss, it wasn't so valuable that the secret pavilion would revoke Starlink's membership for it. Even if Zero Wing offered all of the city's shares, the secret pavilion would refuse. What if Stone Forest City were located in a level 100 neutral map? Shifeng asked, smiling. Chapter 2373, New Stone Forest City. When Yuan Tiexin and Purple Jade heard Shifeng, they froze. His statement felt like a curse to both of them. Is this true, guild leader Black Flame? Snapping out of his daze, Yuan Tiexin couldn't hide his excitement as he gazed at Shifeng. Even his breathing had become a little rushed. He showed none of the composure someone of his status should possess. The various superpowers were doing all they could to explore level 100 neutral maps. These areas would help prepare their players for their Tier 3 promotion quests, which made them desperate. However, these maps' environments were incredibly harsh, and the effects these environments had on players couldn't be mitigated with simple potions. Most importantly, the monsters in level 100 neutral maps were far too dangerous. These problems were giving the various superpowers huge headaches and preventing them from making any considerable progress. Although the various superpowers had considered transferring their guild towns to a level 100 neutral map, doing so required a town transfer token that was specific to level 100 neutral maps. Based on the superpowers reports, obtaining such a token was impossible at the moment. Only super large-scale team dungeons in level 100+ neutral maps dropped the item. Exploring level 100 neutral maps was currently a huge problem. Raiding a large-scale team dungeon in these maps was nothing but a dream at this stage of the game. And yet, Shifeng had just told him that he had relocated Stone Forest City to a level 100 neutral map. Why wouldn't Yuan Tiexin be astonished? If what Shifeng said were true, the secret pavilion would have a much greater advantage when it came to developing level 100+ players. Of course, Shifeng said, smiling. Is the secret pavilion interested in my condition now? This? Yuan Tiexin hesitated, but after a moment he shook his head. Guild leader Black Flame, you know how important that matter is. If we revoke Starlink's membership, we'll essentially be cutting off all relations with the guild. Meanwhile, Starlink had increased the scale of its operations. In fact, it now had influence across both main continents. Many superpowers are fighting to ally with the guild. Even if you offer more of Stone Forest City's shares, I doubt our guild leader will agree to the condition. Please reconsider, Guild leader Black Flame. Demoting Starlink from an advanced member to a normal member and revoking Starlink's membership were two very different things. Starlink's demotion had only reduced the amount of resources and connections the pavilion received from the guild, but if the secret pavilion revoked Starlink's membership, it would lose all access to those resources and connections. Zero Wing had absolute authority over Stone Forest City and could refuse to open the city to the public, which would prevent the city from earning income, and the secret pavilion would lose access to the city's benefits. Unfortunately, the secret pavilion found those losses more acceptable than losing access to the resources and connections Starlink could provide. In the long run, Starlink's resources and connections would benefit the secret pavilion far more than some convenience when exploring a level 100 neutral map. That's a pity. Yuan Tiexin's answer didn't particularly surprise Shifeng. He then calmly asked, I intend to make a trip to Stone Forest City. Would you like to accompany me, Elder Yuan? We'd love to, Yuan Tiexin said, nodding enthusiastically. Since Yuan Tiexin accepted his offer, Shifeng gave his two guests temporary access to teleport to Stone Forest City. Meanwhile, Purple Jade started a private conversation with her companion. Uncle Yuan, are we really going to the city? She asked. She could tell what Shifeng was trying to do right now. He likely wanted to show off the city before they'd officially make a decision, but in her opinion, the act was futile. The benefits a guild city could provide and those from an alliance with a superpower were on entirely different levels. There was no need to consider Shifeng's request. Of course we're going, Yuan Tiexin said, smiling. Black Flame may be immature, but he has relocated Stone Forest City to a level 100 neutral map. It is best if we go and inspect the situation for ourselves. As long as we stand firm, he'll understand that his condition is impossible. Purple Jade understood Yuan Tiexin's reasoning, but she couldn't help but pity Shifeng. Shifeng must believe that Yuan Tiexin would have a change of heart once they arrived in Stone Forest City, but he didn't realize that the older man was using his own trick against him, allowing Shifeng time to realize how useless the struggle was. While Yuan Tiexin and Purple Jade privately conversed, Shifeng finished granting them temporary teleportation rights. Alright, it's done. Let's head over, Shifeng said as he retrieved a guild transfer scroll for the city and activated it. Seeing this, Yuan Tiexin and Purple Jade did the same for the secret pavilion's temporary residence in Stone Forest City. After a moment, the three players transformed into streaks of light and vanished from the special forging room. Cold Spring Canyon, Stone Forest City. Two flashes of light appeared above the teleportation array in the secret pavilion's temporary residence as Yuan Tiexin and Purple Jade arrived. The moment their bodies manifested, however, Yuan Tiexin and Purple Jade were stunned. How is this possible? Yuan Tiexin nearly gasped. The mana in Stone Forest City wasn't as dense as it had been, but the instant they had arrived, Yuan Tiexin felt far more relaxed. Moreover, his five senses had become sharper. He had been exploring a level 100 neutral map with Purple Jade for quite some time, and the environment's chaotic energy had made them both feel exhausted, which had a considerable effect on their combat power. Even when they had plenty of stamina and concentration remaining, they had been forced to return to a city to recover from the exhaustion. However, even when they had fully recovered their stamina and concentration, the chaotic energy hadn't faded from their bodies completely. And yet, as he stood in Stone Forest City, Yuan Tiexin rapidly recovered from that exhaustion. At this rate, he'd be free from the chaotic energy within a few hours. Uncle Yuan, my recovery rate is at least twice as fast as before. If we could rest here, we'd be at least 30% more efficient when exploring a level 100 neutral map. Purple Jade exclaimed, unable to hide her shock. The chaotic energy within level 100 neutral maps was the biggest issue the various superpowers, including the secret pavilion, faced when exploring these areas. This chaotic energy forced players to rest in cities for long periods. However, if they could rest in Stone Forest City, they could explore 30% more of a level 100 neutral map in the same amount of time. In addition, Stone Forest City was now located within a level 100 neutral map, which would save them plenty of travel time. Overall, if the Secret Pavilion's members could set up a base in Stone Forest City, they could spend at least twice as much time exploring level 100 neutral maps as other players. With this much additional time, the Secret Pavilion's members would have a massive lead over the various superpowers members. After taking a moment to inspect the city's unique environment, Yuan Tiexin and Purple Jade headed toward the Stone Forest City's central plaza. The city was mostly the same as they remembered. The only difference was the neutral race NPCs that filled the city streets. Many of these NPCs had set up stalls and hawked their wares. When Yuan Tiexin took a peek at a stall's goods, he felt a little faint for a moment. These neutral NPCs were actually selling level 100 weapons and equipment and of considerably high quality. He had even spotted level 100 secret silver weapons for sale. Of course, these items weren't cheap and some cost special materials. Fortunately, a driven Tier 2 expert could gather the necessary funds and materials for the items. Level 100 weapons and equipment. Players that hadn't yet begun to explore level 100 neutral maps might not find anything special about these items, but it was a different story for players like Yuan Tiexin, who constantly grinded in level 100 neutral maps nowadays. When exploring level 100 neutral maps, acquiring a single piece of level 100 bronze equipment was already a challenge, not to mention obtaining level 100 secret silver weapons and equipment. And yet, the NPCs in Stone Forest City were publicly selling such items. What should we do now, Uncle Yuan? We've already rejected Black Flame's offer, Purple Jade asked nervously. She was also surprised to see the weapons and equipment for sale in the various NPC stalls. She had never expected Stone Forest City to become this amazing. If the Secret Pavilion's members could operate out of Stone Forest City, they'd complete their Tier 3 promotion quests far faster than the various superpowers. Don't worry. Since Black Flame has brought us here, he will ask if we wish to continue our partnership. We can renegotiate with him then, Yuan Tiexin said. He hadn't expected Stone Forest City to offer so many benefits either. Very calmly he continued, let's buy some of the weapons and equipment for now. While Yuan Tiexin and Purple Jade systematically cleaned out the stalls in the central plaza, Shifeng finished organizing his night division. He then left to check on his guests and told Yuan Tiexin, I've finished my business in the city and have other matters I need to attend to, so I'll part with you two here. Since he had settled his affairs in Stone Forest City, he'd have to begin transferring Zero Wings experts to the city. Once they had settled and could get to work, Zero Wings development would reach new heights. Shifeng then pulled a return scroll for White River City from his bag and began to activate it. Yuan Tiexin was stunned. He hadn't thought that Shifeng would be so indifferent, not even bothering to ask how they felt about the city. He certainly hadn't expected Shifeng to act as he did. Please wait, Guild Leader Black Flame. Yuan Tiexin shouted as Shifeng unfurled his return scroll. Is there something else you need, Elder Yuan? Shifeng asked, giving the older man a strange look. It's about the condition you mentioned earlier, Yuan Tiexin said, exasperated. We'd like to renegotiate. If Zero Wing can offer more of Stone Forest City's shares, we might be able to agree to the condition. I'm afraid that won't be possible. Zero Wing will not hand over any more of Stone Forest City's shares. If the Secret Pavilion must still reject my condition, I'll have to accept the unfortunate answer, Shifeng said, instantly rejecting Yuan Tiexin's offer. With the enhanced magic array in Stone Forest City, Zero Wing's development speed would skyrocket. Even if Zero Wing couldn't cut off one of Starlink's main sources of income, it wouldn't be long before his guild could strike back at Starlink. Hence, he had no reason to give away more of Stone Forest City's profits. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Alright, you win. The secret pavilion will revoke Starlink's membership, Yuan Tiexing said, sighing. Shifeng's immediate rejection made it clear that the secret pavilion wouldn't gain any more from the transaction. He continued, however, our guild leader asks that you can open the city to the secret pavilion's members within 2 days. That won't be a problem. Shifeng nodded. Stone Forest City was a basic city and required a lot of players to fortify it. In the bottomless abyss, Shifeng had been able to rely on NPC soldiers, but now he could only rely on players in his knight division. However, his knights would guard his entire territory, not just Stone Forest City, and unfortunately if he relied solely on Zero Wing's experts to defend the city wouldn't be able to operate at full capacity. Hence, the secret pavilion's experts were essential. Shortly after Shifeng and the secret pavilion agreed on their deal's terms, the shocking information spread throughout the secret chamber of commerce. The secret chamber of commerce had officially revoked Starlink's membership. Chapter 2374 God's Domain. Shocked as news of Starlink's revoked membership spread, a commotion erupted among God's Domain's various superpowers. What's going on? Starlink got kicked out of secret? Is the secret pavilion crazy? Maybe they sent the revocation letter to the wrong guild? That's Starlink we're talking about. Not only has it recently annexed a bunch of top adventurer teams and workshops, but it's also recruited many retired peak experts. It's the strongest among the up-and-coming superpowers, and Starlink had influence on both main continents. Why would the secret pavilion even think of revoking Starlink's membership? The various superpowers fell into heated discussions about the secret chamber of commerce's sudden internal announcement. They all felt as if the secret pavilion were playing some kind of prank. Many of God's Domain's chambers of commerce were trying to recruit Starlink to obtain the resources and connections it had to offer. By revoking Starlink's membership, not only would Secret grow weaker, but it would also strengthen its competitors. This would only harm both the Secret Chamber of Commerce and the Secret Pavilion. Dark Knight Empire, Dark Knight City. The Dark Knight Empire's various powers were in an uproar over Starlink's revoked membership, particularly Crimson Emperor and Unyielding Soul. Starlink's departure from the Secret Chamber of Commerce was a huge loss for both Starlink and the Secret Pavilion, but particularly for Starlink. The Secret Pavilion's influence spanned across the main continent, and few could rival its sales connections and resources. Otherwise, the Secret Pavilion wouldn't have been a publicly acknowledged transcendental power in God's domain. Without the Secret Pavilion's support, Starlink's development speed would slow considerably. It wouldn't be surprising if this incident reduced Starlink's income by over 30%. This was a huge blow to Starlink. Hart, do you know what exactly happened between the Secret Pavilion and Starlink? Illusory Words, one of Crimson Emperor's vice guild leaders, asked as she privately contacted Unyielding Heart. No one in my guild has a clue. What about your side? Unyielding Heart said, shaking his head. The situation made him restless and curious. The Starling Corporation supported Starlink, and the guild had partnered with quite a few superpowers. Most importantly, Starlink was developing on both the eastern and western continents, which gave the guild unimaginable status and influence in the Dark Knight Empire. And yet, the Secret Pavilion had removed Starlink from the Secret Chamber of Commerce. It was unbelievable. The fact that the Secret Pavilion had done this meant that something must have happened between it and Starlink, but Unyielding Soul hadn't been able to learn any details about the situation. We don't know anything either. Not even our spies in Starlink have a clue, Illusory Words said, frowning. The Secret Pavilion has always maintained a neutral stance regarding the Secret Chamber of Commerce. I have never heard of Starlink provoking the Secret Pavilion either, yet it abruptly revoked Starlink's membership. It's possible that Starlink has provoked some transcendental existence, and the Secret Pavilion was forced to make this move. If we don't get to the bottom of this, the Dark Knight Empire will become a very dangerous place to develop. The various otherworld powers had been rapidly spreading across the continent, and it was only a matter of time before a massive war erupted between the main continent's powers and those from the various otherworlds. The main continent's resources were limited after all, and some people were destined to be eliminated. Seeing a superpower like Starlink in such a situation, if Unyielding Soul and Crimson Emperors, lesser superpowers were not careful, their names could be permanently removed from God's domain. I know. That's why I've already tasked people to poke around in the secret pavilion. It shouldn't be long before we have an answer, Unyielding Heart said, nodding. He, too, understood how severe the matter was. Since some mysterious power, which was strong enough to force the secret pavilion to abandon Starlink, had arrived, ordinary superpowers like them wouldn't have a place in the Dark Knight Empire if they weren't careful and accidentally provoked this mysterious newcomer. Unyielding Heart wasn't overly surprised that a new mysterious power had arrived. The planar passages were open now, and although he didn't understand much about God's domain's multiple other worlds, those he was familiar with were strong enough to make him shudder. It wasn't entirely impossible that some other worlds had a secret power he didn't know about. While Crimson Emperor and Unyielding Soul fervently investigated the matter, other empires and kingdoms' superpowers did the same. This incident had sparked a passionate discussion in the Fire Dragon Empire, one of the continent's 4 great empires. The empire's various superpowers thought it best to take greater precautions during their important operations. The superpowers that had planned to declare a guild war in particular, put their plans on hold, afraid of unexpected complications. Who actually has the strength to force the secret pavilion to abandon Starlink? Long Xianglong stared at the report in his hands in astonishment. Even on the western continent, Starlink was famous. Because of the guild's powerful background, even the Azure Gamber of Commerce H&D to show the superpower some respect. And yet, without warning, the secret pavilion had abandoned Starlink. Even Long Xianglong found the situation a little unsettling. Should we warn Second Sis about this, Third Uncle? Burning Owl asked with a serious expression. If a power could force the secret pavilion to revoke Starlink's membership, it was an even greater threat to the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Yes, notify her, Long Xianglong said after giving the matter some thought. The situation on the eastern continent is more complex than we assumed. For the foreseeable future, you and your team should continue to grind in the level 100 neutral maps here. If anything happens to Wonder, I want you to lend her a hand so her development doesn't stagnate. Don't bother to help Zero Wing, however. Since that kid dared to make such a boastful declaration before me, I want to see his guild struggle on the eastern continent. Not only had the planar passages fully opened, but some mysterious power with such strength had also arrived on the eastern continent. In Long Xianglong's opinion, as long as Burning Owl didn't secretly help it, a pseudo-superpower like Zero Wing would soon fall. Burning Owl had no choice but to nod in agreement, although he couldn't help but pity Zero Wing. Zero Wing had gone to great lengths to help Silent Wonder win Azure's internal competition, yet in the end, it failed to gain any benefits from Azure. Now, a major threat shook the eastern continent. If Zero Wing weren't careful, it would be removed from God's domain. Elsewhere, Shifeng had returned to White River City's candlelight trading firm. To prepare for Stone Forest City's grand opening, he wanted to produce as many Crimson Sunsets as possible to ensure that the guild's core members could roam the Cold Spring Canyon without issues. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do anything even with Stone Forest City's support. Zero Wing wasn't like the various superpowers. It didn't have a lot of experts that could fight level 100+ monsters. If Zero Wing wanted to develop quickly by relying on the Cold Spring Canyon, it would need to nurture a group of experts that could survive in the area. Without enough strength, Zero Wing could only helplessly stare at the canyon's abundant resources. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Just as Shifeng was about to enter a basic meditation room and resume the Crimson Sunsets production, Silent Wonder contacted him. Guild leader, something major has happened. Silent Wonder anxiously announced. The Secret Chamber of Commerce has revoked Starlink's membership. I know, Shifeng said, nodding. You know already, guild leader? Shifeng's reply surprised her. Thus far, only the various superpowers who all had powerful information networks had found out about the situation. As soon as her younger brother had informed her, she had called to notify Shifeng. Of course I know. I'm the one who caused it, Shifeng calmly stated as he refined the magic crystal in his hand. Chapter 2375, New Stone Forest City opens. You're the one who caused this? Silent Wonder was stunned. For a moment she even assumed Shifeng was joking. Starlink's removal from the Secret Chamber of Commerce had already caused a commotion among God's domain's various superpowers. It made them all insecure, and they used everything at their disposal to look into the matter. They all wanted to know what kind of power could force the secret pavilion to make such a decision. And yet, Shifeng had just told her that he was responsible. How could she bring herself to believe him? That's right, Shifeng said, chuckling at Silent Wonder's incredulous look. Starlink was the reason that Zero Wing had been kicked out of the secret chamber of commerce a while ago. I'm only returning the favor. Returning the favor? How are you still in the mood to joke around at a time like this, guild leader? Silent Wonder asked, exasperated. Starlink is going crazy over this right now. If it finds out that Zero Wing is responsible, things will become. Very few powers could rival the secret chamber of commerce's expansive connections in God's domain. These connections might be of limited use to a pseudo-superpower like Zero Wing, but for Starlink it was a different story. Losing Secret's resources and connections would be a huge blow to Starlink's operations. Coins and resources were the foundation of a guild's development, and without enough of both, it'd be surprising if Starlink didn't regress, let alone continue to dominate as a superpower. This incident would likely force Starlink to delay or cancel most of its plans. It would suffer unimaginable losses. If Starlink found out that Zero Wing was responsible for its removal from Secret, it would do everything in its power to annihilate the smaller guild. It wouldn't hold back as it had thus far. This time, Zero Wing had damaged Starlink's foundation, and practically every superpower in God's domain had heard about the incident. Starlink would become a laughingstock if it didn't retaliate. However, Starlink wasn't the same guild it had been in the past. Based on what Silent Wonder had learned from the Azure Chamber of Commerce, not only had Starlink grown stronger after the planar passage's opening, but it had also formed close alliances with a few otherworld superpowers. Recently, Starlink's shadow had stretched across adventurer alliances that had been rapidly developing in the main continent's various kingdoms and empires. Now, even the Fire Dragon Empire's super guilds were wary of Starlink. These up-and-coming adventurer alliances were impressively powerful. They might not look like it during peaceful times, but if they decided to move against a particular power, they could easily deal a devastating blow. God's domain's various large guilds had a lot of members, but most of the materials these guilds needed for their normal operations came from independent players, which were the majority of God's domain's player base. As long as Starlink paid the adventurer alliances it secretly supported a small price, it could sever any power source of resources. While Silent Wonder tried to figure out how she could keep this horrific information secret, the various superpowers received reports from their spies in the secret pavilion. Zero Wing was responsible for Starlink's removal. The moment the various superpowers' upper echelons received these reports, they gasped in shock. How is this possible? The secret pavilion abandoned Starlink for Zero Wing? Have its upper echelons gone mad? The various superpowers could not believe their eyes as they read their subordinates' reports, yet with the facts before them they had to believe it. Amazing. Truly amazing. Zero Wing actually pulled such a feat off. Unyielding Heart was both overjoyed and stupefied when he heard the news. Neither Unyielding Soul nor Crimson Heart had been able to move against Starlink, yet a pseudo-superpower like Zero Wing had dealt an unprecedented blow. It was unbelievable. The secret chamber of commerce had been as precious as an arm to Starlink, and now that it had lost Secret's connections and resources, it had lost that arm. Even if Starlink retained its strength, its development speed would slow significantly. Zero Wing is actually this powerful? Illusory words read her subordinate's report in confusion. Although Zero Wing's performance in the Dark Knight Empire had been extraordinary, the guild shouldn't be capable of threatening Starlink's foundation in her opinion. Starlink was supported by the Starline Corporation after all. And yet, Zero Wing had just severed one of Starlink's main income sources. She doubted that even Starlink's upper echelons had ever imagined that events would unfold like this. It's no wonder why that kid so boldly rejected me. So, his guild has the secret pavilion's support. Long Xianglong was greatly surprised when he discovered the perpetrator for Starlink's removal from the secret chamber of commerce. However, his surprise quickly turned into disdain as he sneered and hissed, "It's a pity the guild's efforts are a waste. Starlink cannot be stopped by a single Tier 3 player. The secret pavilion will pay for its foolishness as well." Long Xianglong knew a little regarding the conflict between Zero Wing and Starlink. Although losing the secret chamber of commerce's connections and resources was a major loss to Starlink, the setback wouldn't cause the organization's fall. Long Xianglong, who spent his time on the Western continent, knew this. Starlink had already sent the majority of its manpower and resources to the Western continent to establish a foothold, and as a result, it had lacked those assets on the Eastern continent. Now that Starlink's position in the west was secure, Zero Wing's recent actions were tantamount to suicide. As for the secret pavilion, Long Xianglong found its decision to abandon a superpower like Starlink to be utterly foolish. Third uncle, since Zero Wing is responsible for such a major incident, second sis will definitely run into trouble. Should I head over there now? Burning Owl asked. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. He only had a moderate impression of Zero Wing, and he agreed with Long Xianglong about Silent Wonder returning to the Azure Chamber of Commerce. She'd have more space to develop in Azure, and if she remained in Zero Wing, she'd never reach her true potential. I doubt Zero Wing will last much longer. Head over there with your team, Long Xianglong said, nodding, sending Burning Owl to Starmoon Kingdom. Long Xianglong wasn't the only one with such thoughts. The various superpowers upper echelons shared the sentiment. As long as Starlink posted a bounty on Zero Wing, the independent players from the adventurer alliances it supported would move against the smaller guild. Not only would this restrict Zero Wing's resource income, but the guild's members would also have a tough time grinding in the fields. If this continued long-term, Zero Wing's members would become frustrated and begin to withdraw from the guild. As a result, Zero Wing would grow weaker as time passed, while all Starlink needed to do was spend some coins and resources. While Starlink set up its bounty, a commotion occurred within Zero Wing. Stone Forest City had finally opened to Zero Wing's members. Chapter 2376, Leveling Heaven. Starmoon Kingdom, White River City. Several dozen lights flashed in the teleportation hall as Burning Owl and his team arrived in White River City. So, this is Zero Wing's territory? Burning Owl muttered, surprised as he observed his surroundings. Usually, one could determine how prosperous an NPC city was based on how much activity there was in its teleportation hall. The average level of the players in the hall was also a testament to the region's average standards. White River City's teleportation hall was extraordinarily lively. Although the city couldn't yet rival imperial capitals, it could easily compete with Empire's top-ranked cities. God's Domain's empires were incredibly large, with easily several times the player population found in the largest kingdoms. Thus, even Empire's top-ranked cities were more prosperous than Kingdom's capital cities. As far as Burning Owl knew, very few kingdoms had cities like White River City. He was also surprised by these players' average level. Most of the players in the teleportation hall had already reached level 96, with many experts at level 98. White River City's players could even rival those in imperial capitals in terms of levels. While Burning Owl assessed the situation in the teleportation hall, several more lights flashed behind him. As these players arrived, they attracted a lot of attention. They were rather hard not to notice. The moment this group appeared, everyone in the teleportation hall was overwhelmed by a sense of dread. Players' instincts urged them to flee as the newcomers' auras washed over them. What? Starlink actually dispatched its newly formed Hellfire Legion? Burning Owl frowned when he saw them. After the planar passages had opened, Starlink had allied with the superpower that ruled over the demonic Hell World, one of the 6 large-scale otherworlds that were connected to the eastern continent. Like Dark players' favored areas, the demonic Hell World focused on slaughter, and many of its players possessed a powerful legacy, L. Individually, these players were even stronger than those from the Sea God's realm. Relying on the demonic Hell World's special legacy, Starlink had formed the Hellfire Legion, which was now the strongest legion under the guild's command. The weakest of the legion's members was a refinement realm expert, and with their special legacy, even peak experts would find these players incredibly difficult to kill. With the individual members so powerful, it was easy to imagine how horrific all 1,000 Hellfire Legion members would be when they worked together. Because of this, the various superpowers were even more afraid of Starlink. Now, Starlink had dispatched 300 Hellfire Legion members to White River City. If they had to fight those players, even Burning Owl's Heaven Piercer team would be annihilated. Vice Guild Leader, Elder Long has contacted me to inform us to avoid conflict with Starlink as much as possible. A level 100 black-clad assassin quietly reported. Aside from sending in the Hellfire Legion, Starlink has posted a bounty on Zero Wing through the Adventurer Alliances it supports. Starlink is offering 100 CPs for Zero Wing's elite members and 1,000 CPs for core members. The guild is even offering half of the posted bounty to players who can prove they've assisted with the kills. Moreover, Starlink has declared that this bounty will remain in effect until Zero Wing has been removed from God's domain. What a high price. Even I find it tempting. It seems that Starlink truly intends to go all out. The bounty astonished Burning Owl. He hadn't expected Starlink to be so vicious. Many independent players had joined the adventurer alliances Starlink had established with the various otherworld powers, and among them, many were powerful experts that could even rival superpowers' peak experts. The adventurer alliance's contribution points were quite valuable. Players could use them to purchase combat techniques, weapons, equipment, rare materials, and even legacies. Members could even spend the points to hire a team of experts to assist with quests and dungeons. But those uses paled in comparison to their true value. Once members had accumulated enough CPs, they'd earn a promotion within the alliance, rising from bronze to silver or silver to gold rank. As one rose through the ranks, not only would they receive a discount on any CP purchases, but at gold rank, they'd also earn a fixed credit salary each month. To top it all off, there were almost no restrictions on these benefits. The policy had lured many independent peak experts and top adventurer teams to join these adventurer alliances. A CP in Starlink's adventurer alliances was worth 3 silver, but players couldn't exchange CPs for coins. Hence, the CP reward for Starlink's bounty on Zero Wing was powerfully attractive to the adventurer alliance's members. It was even enough to motivate peak experts. Even a superpower would suffer against this strategy, not to mention Zero Wing. Not even God's Domain's various superpowers had thought Starlink would to go such great lengths to destroy Zero Wing. Meanwhile, when Wuxia, who was raiding a level 95 super large-scale team dungeon in the Ur Empire, heard of Starlink's bounty, it surprised her a little. Vice Guild Leader, I doubt Zero Wing will last much longer now that Starlink is relying on its full strength. Should we take advantage of this opportunity? The elementalist Jianghu suggested. That won't be necessary. All we need to do right now is capture the Ur capital city as soon as possible. Everything else is secondary, Wuxia said, shaking her head. However, after giving the matter some thought, she smiled faintly and said, that being said, send someone to keep an eye on Zero Wing. The guild has grown strong enough that its members should force Starlink to reveal its current strength. Understood, Jianghu replied. Although he was a little disappointed that he wouldn't have a hand in Zero Wing's downfall, he didn't dare disobey Wuxia. He immediately notified some of his subordinates to watch Zero Wing. In Zero Wing's White River City residence, tension had risen among the guild's members due to the news of Starlink's bounty. Everyone was worried about the situation. They wouldn't only have to face Starlink's experts this time. Independent experts from multiple kingdoms and empires were joining this fight. If they were not careful in the fields, they could easily be surrounded and slain. Zero Wing was exceptionally strong and had absolute control over a few maps, but as they reached higher levels, they'd have to explore areas outside of the guild's influence. Leveling up would almost certainly become far more difficult. While some guild members considered continuing their development in a new guild, others noticed that the guild residents had a new teleportation point. Quick look. We can teleport to Stone Forest City again. Crap. There's a level 98 requirement, and the guild transfer scrolls cost 500 GCPs each. Wait, something's not right. Stone Forest City has been moved to the Cold Spring Forest? Cold Spring Forest's a level 100 neutral map. What? Stone Forest City is located in a level 100 neutral map now. When they saw the residents' new teleportation point, everyone was dumbfounded. They had never thought the guild would transfer Stone Forest City to a level 100 neutral map. Even the various superpowers only dreamed of accomplishing such a feat. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Some of the level 98 guild members gritted their teeth as they purchased a guild transfer scroll for Stone Forest City. Curious, they activated the scrolls the moment they received them. As soon as these level 98 members arrived in the city's residence, they were stunned by what Stone Forest City had to offer. Not only were their 5 senses sharper within the city, but they also spotted plenty of neutral NPCs selling level 100 weapons and equipment. Most importantly, they sensed the chaotic energy that corroded their bodies dissipating twice as fast as normal. With Stone Forest City's unique environment, it was a leveling haven. Shortly after Zero Wing's members arrived in Stone Forest City, they spread the news throughout the guild, causing an uproar. Naturally, the spies within Zero Wing reported to their respective superiors immediately. Chapter 2377, Enviable Stone Forest City. When they received the reports about Stone Forest City's new location, the various superpowers nearly went mad. Impossible. I thought we needed to raid team dungeons and level 100 neutral maps before we could obtain a town transfer token for those maps. Damn it. Zero Wing was actually able to do it. I want this investigated. We need to find out how Zero Wing accomplished this feat. When the various superpowers discovered Stone Forest Town's new location, the joy they had felt over Zero Wing's misfortune vanished instantly. Now only envy and admiration remained. The various superpowers were desperate for means to accelerate their exploration in level 100 neutral maps. Unfortunately, they had found nothing, and their teams were helpless against these maps' environments and monsters, yet the areas were the future of God's domain. Players could earn significantly more EXP from the monsters in those maps than monsters in lower-level maps. In addition, level 100 maps were the only sources of level 100 weapons and equipment at this point. The various superpowers could only afford to send a large number of players to challenge their Tier 3 promotion quests once they had a sufficient amount of level 100 weapons and equipment. Moreover, fighting the monsters in level 100 neutral maps would be very helpful to players trying to improve their combat standards. Lower-level monsters were almost entirely different creatures after all. Now that Stone Forest City was located in a level 100 neutral map, Zero Wing had an unimaginably massive advantage. Meanwhile, in the Dark Knight Empire's Dark Knight City, it's no wonder why Zero Wing dared to sever one of Starlink's main income sources. So, the guild still had such a card to play, illusory words muttered, shock and envy flashing in her eyes. A guild city in a level 100 neutral map would do more than increase the guild members' leveling speed. It could also become a new source of resources for the guild. Level 100 neutral maps had more abundant resources than level 90+ maps, and these resources catered to level 100 players. The advantage these resources would provide was imposingly large. With Stone Forest City's new location, Starlink would likely be rendered powerless against Zero Wing. The two guilds were no longer playing on the same field. Even if Starlink could target Zero Wing via its various adventurer alliances, the tactic would only be effective against Zero Wing's lower-level members. Any level 98+ members could easily avoid Starlink's bounty hunters by relying on Stone Forest City's level 100 neutral map. Moreover, they'd gain far more than they would from grinding in level 90+ maps. At this stage of the game, even mainstream players had reached level 95. Needless to say, Zero Wing's members who were known for their high quality would have reached higher levels. And the idea of Starlink targeting Zero Wing in a level 100 neutral map was a joke. If Starlink attacked Zero Wing in the Cold Spring Forest, Zero Wing could rely on its city's inherent advantages to beat its enemy to a pulp. Trying to sever Zero Wing from its resource sources was even more laughable. The various power shops might still need lower-level resources, but they needed level 100+ resources far more. If Zero Wing were willing to trade these resources for lower-level items, no power would refuse it. Furthermore, Zero Wing still had the secret pavilion's support. Stone Forest City will be very helpful to players when they challenge their Tier 3 promotion quests, Vice Guild Leader. If we can secure a temporary residence in the city, we'll have an edge over other superpowers when it comes to nurturing Tier 3 players. The level 100 Berserker beside illusory words realized, glowing with excitement. Players had to conduct their Tier 3 promotion quests in level 100 neutral maps, yet these areas were far too dangerous. Finding the lost Tier 3 legacies was also quite time-consuming. However, if players had a city like Stone Forest City, they'd be able to complete their promotion quests in far less time. I know. Unyielding Soul has certainly secured a huge advantage. When Illusory Words thought about Unyielding Soul, which had allied with Zero Wing a long time ago, she could not help but envy the guild. Make the necessary arrangements. We're going to negotiate with Zero Wing. I'll get it done immediately, the level 100 Berserker answered. Aside from Crimson Emperor, a few superpowers had considered obtaining a temporary residence in Stone Forest City. Like Crimson Emperor, these superpowers promptly sent representatives to White River City. Nothing was more important to them than helping their players complete their Tier 3 promotion quest right now. Meanwhile, in an Adventurer Alliance's residence in the Fire Dragon Empire, nothing can stop Zero Wing now, Big Sis Jade. Zero Wing actually has a city in a level 100 neutral map. Not even Azure's Demonstone Town can hold a candle to Stone Forest City. The blue-clad assassin youth beside Jade Bamboo exclaimed. So, he was telling the truth. Realization dawned on Jade Bamboo when she read the latest report regarding Stone Forest City. When Shifeng had declared that Zero Wing could nurture Silent Wonder just as well as the Azure Chamber of Commerce and without Azure's resources, Jade Bamboo had found the notion laughable. And yet times had changed. With Stone Forest City's new location, Zero Wing would have no trouble acquiring the necessary resources to continue its rapid development. Not even the Otherworld's various powers could affect Zero Wing's progression. Meanwhile, in one of White River City's restaurants. How is this possible? Burning Owl felt as if he were dreaming as he read his subordinate's report. Zero Wing had successfully transferred Stone Forest City to a level 100 neutral map, which was something the various superpowers could only dream of accomplishing. Shortly after the various powers had learned about Stone Forest City's relocation, news had spread among the game's independent players, particularly those in White River City. Stone Forest City is amazing. If I could travel to the city, I'd reach level 100 in no time. That's not the only benefit you could get by operating out of Stone Forest City. One of my close friends is a core member in Zero Wing, and he told me that the city even enhances players' senses. If you train in the city's battle arena, your progress will be miraculous. This won't do. I'm going to take the test to join Zero Wing. The latest news about Stone Forest City inspired many independent experts to join Zero Wing. Aside from the help the city could provide as players challenged their Tier 3 promotion quests, the fact that the city could help players gain more progress when training made it impossible to reject. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. For a time, the independent experts that had hesitated about joining Zero Wing due to the recent incident with Starlink fervently applied to the guild. Some of the independent experts from Starlink's adventurer alliances even decided to switch sides, applying to become a Zero Wing member rather than target the guild. Because of Stone Forest City, many independent experts are now applying to join Zero Wing guild leader. Based on the latest statistics, we've received over 10,000 new applications. Some of them are even from Starlink's adventurer alliances, Liang Jing excitedly reported. I doubt even Starlink expected that the experts it sent to attack us would end up joining our guild. Zero Wing had constantly been trying to recruit new members and expand its operations, yet its efforts had yielded limited results. However, due to Stone Forest City's new location, a flood of experts had shown up to join the guild. This would undoubtedly make it easier for Zero Wing to manage its territories. Moreover, since a large number of experts from Starlink's adventurer alliances had turned traitor, the pressure on Zero Wing's members in Starmoon Kingdom had lessened considerably. It's too early to celebrate, Shifeng said, chuckling. Since Lu Xinghua wants to play, we'll have to humor him. Spread the news that Zero Wing intends to establish a Starmoon adventurer alliance in the kingdom. Any alliance member that reaches the silver rank will have access to Stone Forest City, while gold members will qualify to purchase a private house in the city. Chapter 2378, Popular Starmoon Adventurer Alliance Starmoon Kingdom, White River City. Flashing lights filled White River City's teleportation hall as group after group of players arrived. If one carefully watched these players, they'd notice that many of them wore cloaks embossed with symbols from various adventurer teams. Most were top adventurer teams from other kingdoms and empires. There were even some from other worlds. This is insane. Even Origin Curse, the Dark Knight Empire's third-ranked adventurer team, is making a move. I've heard that Starlink is going all out to eliminate Zero Wing this time. The organization is even offering certain benefits in addition to the current bounty. Depending on how much players accomplish, they can even earn special legacies. Zero Wing's in trouble now. Most experts might have a problem with the environment and monsters in a level 100 neutral map, but peak experts and top adventurer teams shouldn't. I know, right? Getting to the Cold Spring Forest might be easier for Zero Wing's members, but once they're there, Zero Wing's ordinary experts will fall. Besides, exploring a level 100 neutral map is still a problem. Even if Zero Wing sends reinforcements from Stone Forest City, they'll likely suffer significant losses. As bystanders in the teleportation hall watched the various top adventurer teams and peak experts arrive, they were shocked, but they also began to place bets on which would survive to the end, Zero Wing or Starlink. Starlink really knows how to splurge, sending so many peak adventurer teams here. Shifeng, who was still working in the candlelight trading firm, was similarly surprised when he heard the news. Hiring a top adventurer team to attack a guild in a level 100 neutral map was incredibly expensive. Yet Starlink had dispatched so many of them. It had likely paid a high enough price that even super guilds would wince. Guild leader, I just received news that Starlink's Hellfire Legion members are starting to move toward the Cold Spring Forest. By the looks of it, They intend to attack our teams grinding in the area, Silent Wonder, who was grinding for EXP, worriedly reported. Why don't I negotiate with my family to borrow some of their experts? Zero Wings members had Stone Forest City to fall back to, but they still had to leave the city to level up. Unfortunately, Zero Wings' foundations were still unsteady. Although an expert could rival a peak expert with the Crimson Sunset, Zero Wing didn't have enough of the sets to match the number of peak experts Starlink had dispatched. Of course, Starlink would suffer tremendously for taking such drastic action, but the organization was supported by the Starline Corporation. It had far more funds and resources than its opponent. Most importantly, several adventurer alliances worked for Starlink. If this persisted, Zero Wing's position would become even more disadvantaged. That won't be necessary. You should just focus on leveling up, Shifeng said, chuckling. Starlink's foundations might be vast, but Zero Wing's no weakling. Shifeng wouldn't have dared consider clashing with Starlink directly before he had transferred Stone Forest City to the Cold Spring Canyon, but things had changed. All right. My team and I will try to reach level 100 as quickly as possible, Silent Wonder said, nodding. She knew that she could only display the Crimson Sunset's full strength by reaching level 100. After Shifeng disconnected his call with Silent Wonder, Liang Jing entered the basic meditation room. Guild leader, I've planned the basic organization and benefits for the Adventurer Alliance. The Alliance's residence is ready as well. We now have residences in White River City, Starmoon City, Zero Wing City, and Stone Forest City. We can begin to recruit members at any time, Liang Jing proudly announced. She brimmed with anticipation and confidence about the new Adventurer Alliance Zero Wing was about to establish. Independent players might consider the benefits the other Adventurer Alliances offered outstanding, but those benefits were nothing compared to what Zero Wing's Adventurer Alliance had to offer. Alright, make the announcement to the public now then. Shifeng nodded. He had wanted to wait until the Azura Adventurer team had grown powerful enough before he established an Adventurer Alliance on the main continent with Azura's help. But since Starlink had bared its fangs, he had no choice but to move his plans forward. With Shifeng's go-ahead, Liang Jing published the news on Starmoon Kingdom's official forums. She also sent her subordinates to manage the recruitment at the newly established Starmoon Adventurer Alliance's residences. In no time the kingdom was in an uproar. What? Zero Wings establishing an Adventurer Alliance? Maybe it's a move to counter Starlink's assault, but Starlink's Adventurer Alliances offer incredibly generous benefits. I doubt many people will be interested in Zero Wings. Wait, you're wrong. Look at what benefits the Starmoon Adventurer Alliance is offering. Any silver member will have access to Stone Forest City, and gold members will qualify to purchase private houses in the city. A private house? Isn't that a little too generous? So far, Zero Wing has only leased Stone Forest City's houses, yet countless people fought over them. If we could buy one of our own, our leveling speed would skyrocket. That's not all. The Starmoon Adventurer Alliance has quite a few residences as well. There's even one in Stone Forest City and Zero Wing City, and members can rest in the residences for free. When the kingdom's independent players saw the benefits the Starmoon Adventurer Alliance offered, they were ecstatic. Many even dropped what they were doing and ran toward the recruitment venues. Stone Forest City was the only city in God's domain located in a level 100 neutral map. Countless experts dreamed of entering the city, not to mention purchasing one of Stone Forest City's private houses. Not even the various superpowers peak experts had that privilege. And yet, as long as they became a silver member in the Starmoon Adventurer Alliance, they could visit Stone Forest City whenever they wished. For a time, independent players crowded the entrances to the Starmoon Adventurer Alliance's residences. These players easily outnumbered those applying to join Zero Wing by more than a dozen times. There were even some peak experts among the crowds. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Meanwhile, the adventurer teams that had come to White River City to target Zero Wing's members began to jump ship, one after another, applying to join the Starmoon Adventurer Alliance. The kingdom's various major powers were stupefied. However, they found these results reasonable. How could Starlink's meager resources possibly compare to the benefits Zero Wing offered after all? Just being able to enter Stone Forest City would give players a massive lead in levels, not to mention the ability to purchase a private house in the city. Who would willingly miss out on the opportunity? Even independent experts from other kingdoms and empires made their way to Starmoon Kingdom when they had the news. The Adventurer Alliances, the various otherworld powers, controlled rapidly lost members. While the Star Moon Adventurer Alliance's member count ballooned, Shifeng received a message from Kola. Guild Leader, we've completed our promotions. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.